Hey guys, welcome back to Themis and Thoth. First of all, please let me know if you can hear me. Um, I went to rewatch one of our past streams and I promise my voice was really, really low. I don't know, maybe I'm not using this mic properly. I'm pretty sure this is a really good mic. I know that much, but I don't know how to use it. So I'm gonna assume that you guys can hear me, but I don't know. I'm gonna continue to shout. I'm gonna try to shout and lose my voice. So good news. Let's start with really what I think is good news. Um, you guys are the best, first and foremost. For our seminar coming up on Sunday, all of the tickets are gone. Um, and that was like within the first 30 minutes of posting. Like I posted it during lunch, and then when I looked back, it was done. It was all gone, and there were 98 of them because Zoom will only hold like 100 people, the Zoom that I ordered at least. And so, thank you. Absolutely, thank you. Like, obviously, it's free and blah, blah, blah. But it felt like I sold off something in like a very short amount of time. And so, like, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie, I feel really good. That feels good. Now, hopefully, hopefully it will be useful. So thank you. Next month we will have the financial literacy review, and so hopefully you guys show up to that also. So thank you all. I'm excited. Cannot wait to see you guys on Sunday. All right, let's get into this video. All right. So, first and foremost, welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday. Hope everyone is doing well. I do appreciate you guys all for being here. I I was concerned about doing this topic in the public. The reason is because we know a lot of people who don't have a ton of depth. They don't really engage with materials outside of wanting to, literally outside of wanting to prove their point, right? And in the way that we're about to have this conversation, it might be a bit stressful for a lot of us here. I know that I have at least 3 devices open because I'm currently speaking to multiple people about what I'm doing, and they have a ton of opinion on Dr. Cotton's essay that we read and that we're going to use to discuss in this live. So it is a lot. I try to make the thumbnail as boring as possible. And part of that is to sort of dissuade people from watching it live so that I can change it. Maybe I probably won't change the thumbnail, but I can change it to something more exciting. So other people who want to watch can watch, but that they don't want to come in during this time. So that's what I'm gonna. That's what I will. I did it like that. Yeah. Yes. All right. I like feminist thought. I like feminist theory. I especially love feminist writing. It is the it is my favorite kind of activist writing because the people who tend to engage in that kind of writing, and by feminists, I do mean Black feminists and intersectional feminists. And the reason is because the people who engage in this kind of work tend to be really thoughtful. They have really thought about their ideas. Their ideas have been challenged before they've ever written it down on paper. And then there is a ton of, hey, so Bobo, hope all is well. I really do hope all is well. There's a ton of work that goes into production of this kind of literature and this kind of work. And I appreciate that. I appreciate work. I appreciate dedication. I appreciate thoughtfulness. And so I appreciate feminist writing, right? All right. So there's a couple of people we're going to draw on. Obviously, Dr. Cotton. We're going to be talking about her. We are going to be talking about Bell Hooks and Patricia Hill Collins. Now, obviously, I won't always be pointing out when we're jumping from theorist to other the theorist, but know that a lot of my thoughts on this has been shaped. I will be challenging, and whenever I'm challenging a theory or an idea, I will let you know. All right. So, in her book Thick, Dr. Cotton describes in her essay, one of her essays from the book Thick, she talks about competence, what it is, why we should achieve it, why we shouldn't try to achieve it, why she tried to achieve it, and ultimately how she failed. Now, I want us to think about competence more broadly, right? The ability to do something, to be good at something, I think is a very minute and myopic way to look at what it means to be competent. But if that is what you have in terms of definition, then it works, right? So competence is having the necessary ability, skill, or knowledge to do something successfully, right? That is what competence is on a sort of basic level. I'm here for my dose. Oh my God. Not me pretending to be embarrassed after I've been trolling about this mango juice all week. All week. I don't have a right to pretend to be embarrassed. Thank you, Nia. Right? So, this idea of competence comes up a lot because we're talking about the political position of Black women, right? And these writers are specifically concerned with the political position, the political, economic, social position of Black women and Black womanhood. The question then becomes, can you achieve enough to not be seen as incompetent, right? Can you achieve so much that your personal status push back against stereotypes, right, in a way that allows the people perceiving you as a Black person, as a Black woman, right, to be competent? If it is true that the stereotype around Blackness is generally negative, can positive accolades, can positive achievement, can positive outlooks, can you achieving more education, more success, more financial resources, can all of that lead to you being seen as competent? And competent, more broadly put, is trustworthy, to be taken at face value, to be seen as someone in need of care when you say you want care. Can you be trusted? Obviously, on your own, yes. But can you be trusted as it relates to the system that is going to determine your trustworthiness, right? And I think all of that comes into play here. And this is why I like the writing, because it is seeking to theorize the experience of everyday people in a way that allows for people who consider themselves academic to understand, but also the everyday person to recognize their experience in writing that might not have been accessible in a way to them. And I think that's absolutely amazing. All right. So, some theories, right? Let's not go to theory because I'm going to open the discussion in a moment. Someone said, "Hello, Themis. I'm loving your sweater. Positive vibes. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is one of my favorite sweaters now. Um, I turn my office is really cold, so anyway, let's talk about this. Right? When we think about capitalism and what capitalism dictates, we're thinking about things like private property. We're talking about things like supply and demand, right? That's the sort of bedrock of capitalism. I'm going in and out of focus, and I don't like that. We're talking about competition. We're talking about freedom, right? And we're talking about incentives to either engage or not engage in certain kinds of behavior, usually around supply and demand, buying and selling, right? So when I say dictates of capitalism, which I will try my best not to say, but it might slip out, when I'm talking about the dictates of capitalism, that is essentially what I'm talking about. Why am I going in and out of focus? This is so weird. Let's see. I'm going to turn off my camera and turn it on again. That is weird. I, I, I am so confused. Is it my light? Sorry, this is bothering me. I'm looking at myself, obviously. I, look, it's not like anyone is looking at me while I talk. So let's. This is so. This is going to bother me. All right. Now, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like how this is doing. All right, it's fine. Let's just continue. So let's start with something in the book. Let me share the screen. Um, I'm not. I'm going to look away. So I think this is where we can start. When we perform some essential service to men, to capital, to political power, to white women, and even to other people of color who are marginally closer to white than they are to black, then we are superwoman, right? I started there as a sort of background because when we talk about stereotypes, I've seen a lot of pushback online, thankfully, to this idea that Black women are strong, right? Strength in the way that it is described through the lens of whiteness as it applies to Black women specifically have been, someone said, turn the light down. All right, hopefully that works. The light is all the way turned down. Um, Strength as it is applied through the lens of whiteness towards Black women in particular does something extremely specific when it comes to Black womanhood. It actually does not make them superwoman in a way that they are revered, but rather it means that they can take pain. The idea of muling comes to mind, where Black womanhood is seen as not even fully human because of their ability to work and work continuously for men, for children, for community, for wide society. But it is never praised when used, that kind of strength is never praised when it is used to uplift the Black woman herself, right? This is what Dr. Cotton is speaking about in this chapter, right? It is how competence gained is revered, right? It's the intelligence, it's the way you speak, it is your access to resource. All of that lends competence to you, but you cannot use it to save yourself. Rather, you have to use it to save other people, to benefit other people. And she does this really amazing thing where she explains all of it through a story that we could dismiss as an anecdote if not for the World Health Organization and the CDC reports that all came out confirming that her experience in pregnancy is the experience of millions of Black women globally. But even in terms of the Western world and specifically in the US, it is the experience of Black women in the US. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. So here's a story. The same with Black women's beauty. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So here is the story. Let me actually do an invite so that if you guys want to come up, you can. We've heard this. I'm not living or dying exhausted, period. So the story goes, do you guys remember when Serena Williams came out and talked about how horrible it was for her to have her child because the doctors didn't believe her pain, that the doctors didn't want to do what she asked in terms of a CAT scan for her lungs. I'm not going to read it, but it she talks, you guys can take a minute to read this. She talks about her experience. And the reason I think it's fascinating to look at this is if we are talking about competence, right? And we're talking about how much of yourself you can develop in a capitalistic society to sell to people in order for them to deem you as someone of status and in need of help, and they will listen to you in need of protection, someone of value. If you can build yourself up enough, can you also leverage that to protect yourself? And the answer, I think, is it depends. It depends on whether or not those people who are with you, who are serving you, who should be serving you, can fully accept your humanness in a way that they should, right? Because there's always an excuse. There is always an excuse. The excuse is you should have known. You should have said something. You should have told us more about your pain. You should have explained it better. You should have understood it better, right? These are the professionals who should know what is wrong with you when you tell them. But instead of accepting that they were wrong, this system allows for the people in power, the people who are deemed as competent, to blame other people who have less power, who are oppressed, quote unquote, right? I say quote unquote, and I'll explain hopefully if I remember at the end. It allows for those people who are competent to blame other people or the people who are less competent or incompetent structurally, because we're not talking about an individual's competent against another individual's competent. We're talking about Black women's incompetence due to systems, right? Because of the ways in which property has been divided and Black women and Black people, specifically in the United States and the Western world, were seen as property. Black women, Dr. Cotton explains, was property made to produce property and never to own property, right? So if you are the property of, made to create more property for your owner, and you could never own property, then it begs, well, let me step back on that and say, don't say beg. It is conceivable that through the history, right, the views of Black womanhood has lingered in a way that highlights them as a strong production of property and not human. We are going to get into the ways in which we as Black people have internalized some of these ideas about womanhood, and we have projected them on to the people who are our mothers, daughters, sisters, and aunts, right? When we think about the political economy, when we think about America in terms of its ability to deem people as competent through systems, we have to understand that the political economy for competence and the political economy as it relates to Black women is one that allows you, the Black person, to feel competent without offering sufficient ways for you to enact that kind of competency, right? Your pain, for example, is something that you have to feel, that you have to understand, and you have to explain. The question is, will the people you're explaining your pain to, will they believe that you are feeling the kind of pain that you're feeling, right? When we think about deconstruction of theories and deconstruction of ideas around America and engagement and how we are perceived in the world, one of the fundamental things that I've always found fascinating is the idea that we don't even fully know what systems deem us incompetent, right? Structural incompetence for Black people exists throughout the American system. We can easily point to healthcare. We can easily point to education. We can easily point to the criminal justice system, but what other systems are out there? Obviously, the media is one, right? So, how do we go through the process of deconstructing systems and their impact on our own competence in the eyes of other people? Should we even care? I think it's an interesting thing because on one hand, we can yell and fight and cry all we want. But on another, when we think about the social systems, when we think about the political economy, when we think about how Blackness interacts with other kinds of color, right? Other kinds of people, other kinds of personhood, we know on some deep fundamental level that there is something unfair in the ways that we are perceived and treated, right? Obviously, we can overcome, and we'll talk about how in a moment when you guys come up and try to explain that portion to us. We can talk about how some are able to overcome in terms of their individual ability to achieve and attain competency, right? Versus others who just fall at the wayside. We don't have to create that dichotomy in this sort of live stream and in this conversation. Rather, we can seek to understand that the system in place have a very specific result for Black people and specifically Black women. We're not just talking about oppression based on race, we're now also talking about gender, right? In a patriarchal world, being woman is a disadvantage. In a white supremacist world, being Black is also a disadvantage. It shouldn't be, none of this should be, but it is what it is, and it's the reality. So, how do we really start grappling with what it means when we talk about intersectionality? How do we think about the ways in which system continue to oppress, even if not intentionally, but because they have not been deconstructed, we don't fully understand the ways in which systems in place, systems we don't even know to articulate, right, how they oppress and how they oppress people, Black people and Black women specifically, right? So let's get into the story. We have Dr. Cotton, right? And she is talking about, sorry, I just got a notification. She got a, why is everyone emailing me? So we have Dr. Cotton, and she is going to work and she feels this kind of pain. So she goes to the doctor because she started, FYI, this is going to become very, I think trigger warning is what I should say. Trigger warning. She is bleeding. She's pregnant and she's bleeding. She decided that she's going to go to the doctor, right? Because she's in pain and she's bleeding. She goes, and instead of rushing her in a sort of emergency room to figure out what is happening, she has to sit in the waiting room with other people, and she sends her husband to the doctor to say, hey, the chair is pretty much covered in my blood. I don't know why I'm out here. And after being weirded out by this, They go in to meet the doctor, who says to her, "You're fat and some spotting is normal. Go home and sleep," essentially. She goes home and she is still in pain. She cannot sleep. It's about 3 days of this. She calls them. They're like, "It's fine. You're fine." When she cannot take it any longer, she goes back to the hospital to her doctor. And uh, they did not want to do an ultrasound, essentially. And she essentially tells them, "Look, you have to do this. Like, that something is wrong." And they found three babies inside of her when she's only pregnant with one. It's not actually three babies, it is two tumors that are larger than her child, right? Now, there is a lot even here, right? And I'm going to put this on the screen for a second to read. She said, "I was married. All my status characteristics screamed to competent, but nothing could shut down what my blackness screamed when I walked into the room." I think this is important for two reasons, a lot of reasons, but two reasons in particular. The first, I will tell you the last, hopefully at the end, but the first is blackness does have meaning. When people say blackness is meaningless and I don't see color, well, we can look to the Little Mermaid debacle to know that all these people who talk about them not, they didn't see color, they did. Someone said malpractice. Unfortunately, this would not be malpractice. It would be a hard case to win. This would be a hard malpractice claim to win. There is a lot of discretion that the doctor has in terms of what they will do and when they will take things seriously, even measuring pain, which we will get to in a moment. So, so the image I said showed, I'm having the note, my notes up now. The image showed three babies. Obviously, it's not three babies. There were two tumors that were larger than her own child. The doctor said, here's what the doctor said before she left. This is all allegedly based on Dr. Cottom's story. He says, "If you make it through the night without preterm labor, it would be a surprise to me." And then he walks out. The night nurse mentioned that she was in labor for 3 days. So what she was experiencing was her being in labor. You should have said something, is what the night nurse said to her. Right? This is the person who has come to the hospital, have told you she's in pain, showed you that she's bleeding, and after you send her home, she comes back and say, "Look, this is a lot." She forces you to do an ultrasound. There's now there are two tumors beside her baby, is bigger than her baby, and your response is, "You should have said something." That is what the nurse scolded her. She asked for pain medicine, Dr. Cotton asked for pain medicine, and they told her she had to wait until the pain was severe enough. Now, if you know anything about pain, you know there is no way for the doctors outside of you to measure the pain you're feeling. All they have to rely on is you telling them how painful it is. So they refused to give her the medication because they didn't believe, essentially, that she was. In the amount of pain that she said she was in. In the delivery room, she was slipping in and out of consciousness. A week of delivery, and her daughter finally comes into this world and dies after taking her first breath. The nurse then says to her, "There was nothing we could have done because you didn't tell us you were in labor." Let me read that again. The nurse, after this woman's daughter passes away, says, "There was nothing we could have done because you didn't tell us you were in labor." When we think about the system that we're in, there is a lot of theories as to why the outcome for Black women in their interaction with the healthcare system is the way that it is. The only one that makes sense to me is racism. And not that these individual people are racist, but rather the interplay of racism and racist stereotypes about Black women leads people to actually believe in good faith that these women, the Black women, are not as in pain, or as they're not in pain in a way that requires immediate addressing of said pain, right? It is generally dismissed. How do we change the minds of people regarding Black women's interaction with pain, Black women's interaction with fitness, Black women's interaction with the medical system? How do we change the opinion and the minds of these people who are tasked with giving help to these women? Because if the stats regarding Black women's interaction with the healthcare system and how doctors do not believe them isn't enough, how can we tell them what is? Right. So before I get into the feminist thought, and we're going to get into Black feminist thought, Patricia Hill Collins, I think, will be best to describe what controlling image means. Right. I think a lot of people will think controlling image is about stereotypes and how to fight it back. It's not. And I think she does. I've been most of my night last night was trying to figure out where which of the videos where she's explaining it would be the best. So I will do that. But before I go, confidence with love. Um, what is up? How are you?
I am well. How are you, sir?
Doing well, doing well. What do you want to add? This is supposed to be a conversation, so anyone who want to jump on can. Go ahead.
I I read um that essay, and as a nurse, well, I'm primarily a peds nurse, but at in neonatal ICU, but it's so linked to labor and delivery, and the outcomes for Black women. That HHS study you were talked about, um, it tells us that Black women die 4 times more often, you know, during pregnancy, delivery, and up to a year after, than white women who have less education. And like Dr. Collins is, well educated. Um, she understood her body, but it didn't matter that she understood her body. They did not see her as human. And so this is what we go up against as Black women and Black girls. Are we going to get them to care? Are we going to are we going to be able to get these people to work at this differently, look at this differently? I don't know. I've been trying for 33 years as an RN.
Yeah.
So I do know this though. We as Black women, we are so capable of so many things that instead of giving our competency to whiteness or Black men or whoever else, that we turn that competency around and we give it back to ourselves. So we are capable of building our own healthcare infrastructure as Black women.
Wait. So that's the
Because
thing, though. That's the so you're to do that. You have to ignore everything outside of Black womanhood, and the reason is so when we think about how Black women are churned through the healthcare machine that neglects and sort of ignores them until they are made incompetent, these are the words of Dr. Cotton, right? When we think about that process, we also recognize that Black women are praised and their competency is acknowledged in service of everyone else but themselves, right? And so to create your own structure and to essentially go and try to benefit yourself, that is going to be met with a vicious kind of pushback. both internally, your own group, and externally regarding everyone else who seek to benefit from your work. No one, most people aren't going to want to help if this theory is true, because you're supposed to be muling for them. So
Understood.
how do we, the people who are allies and black women, go about this kind of building without the help of others? Because I promise you, you do need the help of others, at least right now.
I don't think that we do it without the help of others. Actually, I've seen it done, was at the forefront of seeing it done for Hispanics in California. They actually um, have gone the legal route to make sure that migrant children are being able to go to school for free. They, of course, got a lot of pushback as Hispanic people who are migrant, who are, some are not legal, but oh, over time they they got what they needed from California's, groups. And in the meantime, what they were doing was creating clinics of diverse kinds in which they accepted, different types of payments. So it's not that we're not going to get pushback or that we don't need help, is that we would be taking our competence, and instead of us going and building somebody else's hospitals, which we do as Black women, because we're engineers, we're tech, we're nurses, we're doctors, we're all kinds of things, right? We can turn that around. Are we going to get pushback? Yes. Are people going to hate that? Yes. People want us to mule for them, right? And that's great. They can want that. And you're not getting it. If I say no, it is no, right? But it takes a certain amount of confidence. And yes, competence, but definitely what I found over my years is that people see, whether they see me as competent or not,
Hello? Confident. You said whether they see you as
and
competent
with
or
that
not.
flavor, they actually get with me.
Yeah.
Whether they
You,
see me as competent because I'm Black or not, you know, you can't deny once I get in that I'm competent. So you can be mad at it. You can say, well, she can't be that smart or whatever, but it doesn't change who and what I am, and that I know who I am, and I know
yeah.
my
The
worth.
thing is,
Yeah.
so this is the thing about competence, though, and this is where I was going to save this for the end, but we can get into it now. The problem with competence is that it, in a lot of ways, not every, but in a lot of ways, it requires others to buy into your competence. If you are starting a business and you're borrowing money, it requires that the lender believe in your competence. If you are getting an investor to do something for you, that investor must believe in your competence, even down to school. The teacher, unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't even look at your work on its own. They look at you and judge you before they judge the work that you produce. So your competence is generally, not always, but generally required for your test scores to be high, right? Unless you blow it out of the water, where it is undeniable, like a multiple choice test, they cannot then skew the results based on who you are. But on an essay, they can.
Right. And that, I'm talking about a difference between how we've generally been programmed to look at our competence through the gaze of other people as Black women and Black girls, and what's taken years for some of us to be able to get the therapy we needed, all these different things to build our own self confidence so that we can walk through the world our most authentic selves. And for me,
It
I'm
is
just going
why
to use myself.
that is why I like Black Girl Magic so much. For all the critique people threw its way, I think a lot of things. First, our media has made it so that we've only seen black people for a long time. We've only seen black people through the white gaze, right? And for the first time in history, through all kinds of media platform, we have the ability to not only show ourselves, right, but also to show other groups of people how we see them. This is a new phenomena, right? It is unfortunately, a lot of us use the platform to look at each other as opposed to really sort of interact with the rest of the world and show different versions of blackness. But I do take your point, by the way. I will add as we move forward. Sorry, Alien Superstar, Super, Alien Super. I don't know why I said Superstar. You're on mute. All right. I am not sure what is happening, but Alien, you're on mute. All right. So let's try to push. Correct theme is some teachers even grade in a curve. Oh, I know. A Georgetown negotiation professor had said some foolishness and she got fired over it regarding knowing who is going to do well and who is not based on essentially the black kids weren't going to do well. So that was fascinating to me. But we cannot divorce the experience of Black womanhood in America from capital and capitalism, right? Pain and pregnancy, for example, generally put, are inconvenient to bureaucratic efficiency, right? Black Denial of Black women's pain and refusal to address Black women's pain is actually buying into the system in a way that says, this is inconvenient. Your pain is currently inconvenient and inconvenient in a way that I refuse to address because you are supposed to be strong. Confidence with love, by the way. This is a conversation. It feels like
Uh,
I'm lecturing and I'm glad you're up here so
no,
I
no,
don't
I'm
have.
just listening. I'm taking it in. I'm taking it in.
Yeah.
Yes, that is their way of conceptualizing us. That we are here to serve from before we're born to after we die. Um, so I do understand their position, and as someone who's learned that what we have to do, what I have to do, what I've helped other black women and girls do, is build our self-confidence so that we decide what we are. There's always going to be people with different ways to come at us, and for us as black women, we're actually targeted on so many different levels. So there was a young man and he asked a question on TikTok. He said, is is black women going into the healthcare system to get whatever care, uh, like black men dealing with the justice system and the police, um, and the outcomes of that? And the answer is yes. Black
I
women
mean,
after black women
I
will tell
would
you
venture to
yes.
say, wait, I I understand why you say yes, but when Black women are 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth than white women, I'm gonna say that's kind of out of this world in terms of being able to compare to anything. But I do take your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're
243%.
right. And yes, and that's four times more. What you're putting it in a different mathematical format, but that's four times more than white women. But what HHS found out about that is that they decided, let's increase how many black women we can get to become doulas. You know, um, what was my great grandmother? Oh, they we deliver babies. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Okay, it just went out of my head. Sorry, Themis. But
No, no, you're fine. Yeah, but
well,
the
well,
percentage that we're talking about is like we're talking about, and I don't want to talk about a country in a way that makes it seem like they're a bad country, but I mean it in the way that America's at least medical system is supposed to be way more developed, right? So when the black women are dying at the rate of women in Mexico and Uzbekistan,
hmm
that in in American society where we're supposed to be advancing in terms of medical advancement, like we're supposed to be, the fact that that is a reality is a problem. Being identified as
well,
competent being identified as competent is a double-edged sword for Black women. The acknowledgement is sure to lead to talent and work exploitation. Unfortunately, Black women need to build infrastructure so we can rest. It's sad. Well, I do agree, but competent, if you're competent or deemed competent, but you're being used as opposed to elevated, then you're not being seen as competent structurally, right? So what competence would mean in terms of being employed is that you would rise up the ranks, right? As opposed to being used for your labor. If you're only being used, then you are competent on an individual level, but there is structurally you're incompetent. Sorry, go ahead.
but that is how we are dealt with in the workplace as well, right? As Black
Yeah,
women, we
yeah.
are
So you're deemed
we're
structurally
structurally in, yeah, as
Yeah,
far as they are concerned. And again, to say that we're not human, but HHS, what they really ended up extrapolating, I don't know if you noticed this, is when they said, okay, so what we're going to do is get more Black women to become doulas, and nurses and doctors and things like that, because we found out that Black women don't die in those numbers when it's a Black woman taking care of them. They only die in those numbers when it's white women in in the care of white women. And the
yeah,
same thing is true for the 50% of our babies that die in as newborns, um, or throughout our pregnancy. 50% more than white children. It is in
yeah.
the care of white women. So the answer is, oh, well, we have to increase the number of Black nurses, Black doulas, Black whatever, because whether you're white or you're Black, if a Black woman takes care of you, you are going to not only live but thrive. But if you're
Yeah.
Black and a white woman does, that's another story. So yeah, we have some
And
structural
by the way,
issues.
like yeah, it's structural. Like I think there. I'm gonna come back. Thank you, Gia. By the way, I appreciate that. T says black men as well. T, by the way, if you want, you can click the link and come and add to the conversation. I would like to include more diverse voices, obviously, and so please, definitely, T. Please feel free to click the link and like come explain some more of that for us. Alien Super, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a slight echo, so quickly. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is it okay? So I'm on a Bluetooth headset. So I was trying to get my mic connect. That's why I kept coming in and out. But
You have to go quickly though because there's a kind of echo. Sorry.
okay. So what I was basically going to say is that my minor in school was public health, and I actually worked with Meharry Medical College, which is based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And Tennessee is pretty much number one in infant mortality. For Black women, it is an extremely huge health disparity in everything that the young lady up here, I didn't catch her name, I missed her name, but everything that she's
Confidence
saying
with
is very
love.
much true. Yeah, confidence is love. But everything that she's saying is true. It's 100% true. Black women are 4 times as likely to die. Their children are 3 times as likely to die. even during childbirth and even within the first year of their life. Um, and there's a whole lot of social economic factors that play into basically the health disparity that is infant mortality. And I was actually a part of a uh, small group of researchers at Meharry Medical College to try and combat infant mortality because it is extremely high. And one of the reasons it's also high is because Black women
Wait,
are
wait, wait.
10 times
Alien
more.
Super. Wait, wait. Alien Super. I want you to continue because I'm like really engaged, but it's hard. It's very difficult to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, it is just the sound is really bad. Can you leave and come back? Don't do your headset. Just speak directly into the phone.
Is it better now?
Nope.
It's not. Okay. I'll just. I'm about to take my break, so I'll just come back when I go on my break.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. I hate when that happens because I actually want to hear what people have to say. Um, so when through the lens of structural competence, or to understand rather structural competence, Dr. Cottom highlights controlling image, metrics of domination. I won't get into diffusion of status characteristics, but when we think about controlling image, it's an invocation, obviously, of Patricia Hill Collins, right? Like, if you've read Black Feminist Thought, you know Patricia Hill Collins. You know that controlling image is her. Well, I'm not going to say it's hers, but she did popularize it in a meaningful way. And so I went out to find her to explain what controlling image is. And I think she is better at explaining it than I am because I've attempted to do it multiple times, but everyone I've explained it to seemed to revert to stereotypes and assuming that's what I'm talking about, as opposed to like the mammy archetype and archetypes that animate how people view Black people and actually how Black women view themselves. And I think that's quite fascinating. So I will let her explain it. Travis, go ahead.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Background.
Can you hear me?
Yep. There is an echo. Can you turn me off in the background or down?
This is my first time ever coming on one of these, so I'm kind of new to it.
Do you have a separate device?
Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Yeah, I was just saying in regards to some of the conversation that was going on in the chat that as far as Black women being work mules, Black males are as well. For instance, the company that I'm in right now, I raise funds for a nonprofit, and I'm very good at it. So you know what they do? They keep me on acquisition in lapsed, which means everyone I'm talking to is someone that has never been a member or they were a member and they are no longer a member. And a lot of my coworkers are talking to renewals. They're talking to people that have been member for 2-3 years. So it's a lot easier for them to make their goals. And this is just the stuff that we as Black people go through. When we try to excel, we come into corporate America, then they heap these unreasonable expectations on us. And that's how they keep us down. You know, that's all I wanted to say, that we in this together. Black men and Black women are both under a system of white supremacy. That's all I wanted to say.
Sorry. Yeah. And so I'm trying to engage in a meaningful way. I want to apologize because my appetite for certain things is just not where it needs to be, and I'm trying to like be serious about like all of this. All right. So when it comes to the sort of interaction with whiteness, you see Black people generally, Black men and Black women, as experiencing the same sort of reality in terms of the a sort of oppression and the oppressive system that exists.
So I have a question.
Wait. But before you go, I wanted to hear Travis. Travis. All right. I don't know what's happening. Go ahead, confidence with love, because I can't hear Travis.
I was just going to ask Travis if he had heard about the the statistics you're talking about with Black women, because what I often find is Black men don't really know what is going on with Black women, but we have to know what's going on with them. So I wondered if Travis knew about Black women dying 4 times more than white women, or our babies dying twice as much and more than white newborns. And part of that is we don't always have the support from Black men while we're in delivery, right? A lot of times we're delivering either by ourselves or with our moms or someone like that. But Black men don't actually need to know what we go through as women throughout our pregnancy. They don't need to understand us at all. Somehow we're just I, I feel like it's like, oh, you're only pregnant for a month, and our bodies go through so many changes and things like that. So I wondered about how much he knew about
Well,
what's
he
going on with
just,
Black women.
yeah. Travis, did you hear? Work hard for
I'm
that
here.
promotion.
I'm here. Can
Thank
you hear
you,
me?
A. Yeah. We can hear you now.
Yeah, well, I was aware of a lot of those statistics. I mean, if you look at negative statistics all the way around the board, from health to finances, I mean, Black folks are going to be at the bottom. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You can look up some of the statistics on Milwaukee, Wisconsin pertaining to Black people. We have one of the highest Black male incarceration rates, one of the highest Black male unemployment or jobless rates. So, yeah, and I'm also a college graduate. I wrote a lot of research papers on these subjects, and I started to learn a lot more when I actually was in school and actually had to write papers on these subjects. So,
Travis,
yeah.
Travis, do you want us to talk about Black men instead? Because I think, like,
No,
are
I
you
think
like?
go ahead, sir.
Do you want us to talk about Black men in terms of their oppression regarding the system and how hard Black men have it?
Well, Black men and Black women have it hard. That's my point. Uh, both of us are Black. And if you look at the statistics, we are both going to be on the bottom. Most of the time. So I'm
Hmm.
not
Okay.
derailing anything.
I
I
got
mean, Black men
I
and Black
do.
women are under oppression together. I mean,
Wait. Yeah. So does this feel like your all life mattering the situation right now?
no, I mean, I'm saying Black men and Black women are under a system of white supremacy. Both.
Mm-hmm. But
So
wait. Do you understand what I mean when when I say does it feel like your all life mattering it?
yes, I know what you're saying. You're saying that I'm taking something that's specifically to one gender and I'm trying to be inclusive to everyone. All lives matter in it. I came into the
Yeah.
conversation late. I mean, I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I just was going off
Yeah. No, we
a
were
couple of comments I saw.
discussing. Have you read Dr. Cottom's book, Thick?
No, I have not.
We were discussing an essay from that book called Dying to Be Competent. And it's specifically talking about Black women's experience with the healthcare system and whether or not you can build up competence in a way that would overcome structural incompetence.
Well, there's going to be white supremacy everywhere you go. I mean, they are literally everywhere. So,
Yeah,
Black women working in the hospital, there are going to be white supremacists that are doctors and nurses, and even Black women are patients. They're going to be under the care of these white supremacists. So, of course, they're not going to give them the proper care or the care that they give white women. This is why we
yeah.
see Black women dying more from these types of things, and also again, black man too. Of course,
Wait,
not
what do you mean?
childbirth and things like that, of course, but black men and black women receive care that is not up to standard in the healthcare field. Yes, we do.
All right. But do you understand what
So
I
I
mean?
would
Wait, no,
say
no, no. Wait, wait.
as a registered nurse.
Wait, no, no, wait. Before you go, because I don't want to. I was told that I should let men speak, and it's sad because, like, I- at a moment like this, let me just say, Travis, I would have just kicked you off and said you are derailing, because particularly because of the subject matter was specifically geared towards Black women based on
I
the
didn't hear
chapter of
all
the
of that.
book.
I came in late, and I
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
saw a couple of topics in the chat, and I was kind of responding to the people in the chat. You invited me on, so I got on here. But yeah, I'm late, man. I don't know the
Yeah, no,
whole.
no,
I
and
don't know
I
you. This is my first time watching your show, and I don't know what your viewpoint is. And I certainly did not mean to derail it. If you guys were talking about something specifically for Black women, I love Black women. Black women have been in my corner 100% as far as women in my family and all of that. So I would never try to step on Black women's toes when it come down to them speaking on something that is just for them. So if you guys
yeah.
don't want to hear me talk, I'll just go
No,
back.
no, no. It's not. Wait, wait. It's not that I don't want to hear you talk. It's I am a bit perplexed as to why Black men, like, because you came in and you didn't hear the beginning, which makes sense. Like, obviously, and everyone is not watching from the beginning, right? And the title might not be, if you haven't read the book, you wouldn't know what the title is talking about. So that makes
Right.
sense. Um, but we were talking about Black women's experience, in America in the healthcare system, and you included Black men when we were specifically talking about,
Somebody
mortality
in the
rate.
comments said that Black women are work mules or something like that in corporate America, something to that effect. And I said Black men too as well. I was speaking to that. Like I said, I came into this show late. It wasn't my intent to even get on here and speak with my microphone. I was just responding to some things in the chat room. You invited me on, brother.
I did
So
invite you on
so
because
if you guys want to talk
wait,
about
wait,
Black women's
no, stop,
experience in
wait,
the
I don't
healthcare, I can't really
understand
speak
this.
to that because I'm not a
Wait,
Black female. I do know that there are disparities, of course, with that, but I
wait, no, I muted you, by the way. The way I do this is I am graceful and I give people the opportunity to speak, and then I speak. I don't speak over people, or at least I try not to. And you, in return, do not speak over me. Like, I don't do the whole yelling back and forth thing because I don't yell like that. That's not, no. So I will let you speak when I ask a question, and then you can answer. The issue I'm having very specifically is you're responding to someone saying Black women are muling, essentially. Um, the context for that is within the chapter, within the essay, the question about muling and Black women being strong has been used, right, to explain Black women's experience. So they're competent and they can build up their resume, become articulate. I hate that word. Get the education, get the job, all of that. And they can have their resume built out, but unless it is in service of Black men, white women, capitalistic America, it is not viewed as valuable if they're using it for themselves. So if someone is saying muling, then the context for that comes from the chapter. You can disagree with the chapter if you want, but there is context for which
I
someone would
haven't
be
read the
talking about.
chapter, sir. I haven't read the
Yeah,
book.
yeah, yeah,
Like I said, I
exactly.
don't
No,
even
no,
feel
no.
like at this point, I don't even think I should really be in this conversation because I haven't read the book you guys are talking about. I don't
I mean, that's
understand the full
fair. I mean,
context of the conversation.
that
I
kind of
came in
self
late. I saw a couple things in the private chat.
that kind of self awareness, I think, is good. That kind of self aware. I don't think you have the range for the conversation. Anyway, he came in specifically wanting to include black. Yeah, I mean, I attempted to talk to him, but I mean, at this point, I don't. My life does not circle around talking to emotional people, and men who want to be included in birth rate. Like, do you get pregnant? No. Do like, if you were a trans man coming up here, then maybe you would have a conversation, but this doesn't make sense to me. He came in specifically wanting to include black men. Yep. All right. So let's go. We were at the first theory, which is controlling image. And instead of explaining it myself, we are going to go to Patricia Hill Collins so she can explain it. The fact, sorry, I have to go off on one more tangent. The fact that we cannot sit and listen to other people expressing how they're experiencing the world without always interjecting our own oppression, because black men are oppressed in the system. I agree, right? But the fact that you could not sit and take in someone else's own oppression, hopefully, for this person who came on to talk about white supremacy, they can also recognize how white people cannot sit and talk about Black Lives Matter without interjecting All Lives Matter. Now, I can critique white people for that because I can sit and hear every group of people talk about their own oppression without interjecting mine, right? But the fact that you can't do that hopefully means you sympathize with All Life Matter. That's what it's giving, because it was definitely giving All Life Matter. New rule, this is a class and homework is being discussed. Please be honest if you didn't do the assignment, sit back and learn something. Please, yeah, agreed. Now, I did call him up, and I called him up to explain why he wrote that in the chat, and he want to back away from the fact that he was All Life Mattering it. So, yeah. Yeah, no, I invited him up. So I invited him to tell me why he needed to include black men in the conversation. But that is that on that. Thank you, Curry Up and Eat. All right.
And controlling images as they relate to mass media. Because controlling images say, and the controlling images that have been applied to black women that I talk about in Black Feminist Thought, and we can sort of nuance that a bit more now, would be the mammy, the matriarch, the Jezebel, and the welfare mother. I believe that's the version that I have there. And those controlling images aren't just benign representations. They actually are part of power relations that shape how people treat black women, how black women receive those images, and how black women respond to those images as a site of resistance. So it's a power relation. And I argue that controlling images in general, each group that is positioned within racism, sexism, heterosexism, capitalism, has a constellation of controlling images applied to it. So, for example, white men are controlled by the controlling images applied to them. They can assume very easily that they're smarter than everyone else, that they're better off than everyone else, that they're entitled to run things, that they can, in fact, hit people. And not all white men are that way. Many white men are that way, and many are not. It's the struggle with the images that have been applied to you. And there's also the notion of the relationship among the images. The controlling images that have been applied to black men, for example, are distinctive than those that have been applied to black women. Now, back to black women. Because the important issue for black women is to recognize that the controlling images that have been applied to black women are uniformly negative, right? Other groups, it's positive or it's a mixture. But when you're confronting uniformly negative controlling images, the challenge is to not internalize those images and to start evaluating your behavior in terms of how well you can be a mammy, or how well you can be a matriarch, or maybe I'll just be the best Jezebel I can be. It's really to develop a more sophisticated analysis of how those images control in many ways, and then how they can be resisted in the same ways. And I think that's at the heart of black women taking back and developing a black feminist identity that fundamentally says, I'm going to resist that. But I don't know exactly the pathways that I'll use necessarily, but I'm going to resist that. To me, we're in a really interesting period of time around images and controlling images as they relate to mass media. Because now images are much more powerful, they're visible, they travel so quickly. There's so many people in the world who think they know Black women because they've seen television and movies, right? So in some ways, those sort of cultural products become texts that we can use to analyze. Kids love to look at these things and analyze them by saying, wait a minute, that woman is being depicted as the matriarch, only as the maid. She's a servant. She's the one who's following orders. And if you can see that matriarch image and Mammy, if you can see that Mammy image, and you can see how that's an image that says Black women are designed to serve and not to do much of anything else, then you can understand some of the dynamics in corporations, for example. All right. It's not like it's just a one-on-one personal experience. You can see why promotions happen and don't happen for certain groups of people in terms of who should be serving and who should not be serving. So you can begin to see the patterns of how these images are used to control. The welfare mother is a very important one. In the US, welfare, the entitlement to the protection of the state and to support for well-being of families and children has been racialized. And that's a way of saying, oh, those Black women who are on welfare are unworthy. They don't want to work. It's been an image that has consistently been used to convince other people that the state is not serving them because it's serving all these unworthy welfare mothers or welfare.
I hate that I'm interrupting to say this, and it's so annoying. Please don't respond to the person getting emotional in the chat. Like, we've seen people have meltdown in these chats before. Like, let this man melt down how he want to melt down. Literally, we don't care. I've specifically prevented myself from comparing Black men to Black women because even with all of the, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. It's not good. Let's just say it's not good and move on.
Queens would be another way that that was described. And that's a new image that emerged with Social Security in the US. So when you go down the list of each of these images, the matriarch is one. Now that one appears to be really positive. I'm the matriarch of my family. I'm a strong Black woman. But that image can also be used to sort of work. I had the mule in there too. I forgot about the mule. Somebody that is worked to death. There may be 5 in there. I'm not sure what exactly is in this particular edition. But the notion that you can work Black women to death, and the notion that Black women are so strong that you can work them to death, and they can be matriarchs of families.
S. Murphy, if you would like to explain this, you can. Please come up and explain this because I actually don't know what this is.
Is not caring for Black women sufficiently. So now there's a movement among many Black women to talk about something called self-care. That if others don't care for me, I'm going to have to stop and care for myself in order to survive so I can do all these other things. Because everyone expects mama or the matriarch to be all things to all people at all times. And that's a tough thing to do, right? So that's just a quick description of how these particular controlling images work with Black women. And we should also be careful that a controlling image doesn't necessarily have to be uniformly negative, right? So the controlling image of the matriarch or the mother, the good mother, Michelle Obama used that image to good effect, to be the strong mother of the nation, but who's kind, all of that. And that can be a politics of motherhood that can be confining for people who don't have or don't want to be married to men, who might want to have other types of family forms, who aren't necessarily privileged to be able to afford a private house or a private home. So this whole notion of let's pattern ourselves after Michelle Obama as mom in chief, that's the term that she would use. So a lot of women have used these particular images strategically. I think she's using the images of Black womanhood strategically because she knows what they are. So she's constructing or has constructed herself as a very good mother in a different way. So these images become remade over time, they become refashioned. But the thing to not forget is that they are about power relations. They are the front stage view that you can get as the entry point to power. These are the images that all of us encounter about the groups that we're in. And we have to decide, or the multiple groups that we're in, and we have to decide how we're going to work with them, use them, surprise people with how we use them, or challenge them, if that's the case.
All right. So I think one of the main things that I wanted us to understand, it's not just about stereotyping, right? It's about archetypes and how you can step into various archetypes to better serve you. I think an unfortunate reality is we have so often trying to step away from these some archetypes because we see them as bad, but we can think about how we can incorporate them to get what we need done, and how we can either step away from them depending on the social situation. Ultimately, it is less about stereotyping and more about self actualizing. She talks about something that I think is fundamental to why they are not stereotypes. It is self care, right? How do you step into the strong Black woman for yourself, right? Like the strong Black woman is seen as good if you're in service of others. But when you're in service of yourself, it's seen as selfish, it's not deemed worthy of praise, and all of that kind of stuff. Ultimately, though, that's what it should be used for. How do you take care of yourself in a system that denies you protection? It denies you advancement and self actualization, but it requires that you be the superhero for everyone else. I think the way she explains it, I think, is beautiful. By the way, when we get to the metrics of domination, this was explained in the Black feminist theory, again, Patricia Hill Collins. I won't use Patricia Hill Collins' video to explain it, but instead I will use Bell Hooks's explanation because I think Bell Hooks's intersectionality is important. And it essentially is the same thing. I probably will get my head ripped off for saying that by some people, but yeah. The easiest answer, let me do something because we can get into this. The easiest answer is that racism and sexism and class warfare are resilient and necessary for global capitalism. So, racism is not a byproduct of capitalism, but rather it is a part, racism and sexism are intrinsically linked to the global capitalistic system that we now live in. If this is true, trying to be competent in a system that requires your incompetence will not work based on Dr. Cottom's approach because, well, you are structurally incompetent. I think this is great theory. Like, agree with it, disagree with it, whatever you want, you have to admit this is great theorizing. This is good writing. This is amazing approach to theory. Now we can talk about whether or not we can inculcate or we can completely create a bubble in which we become self-actualized and the systems we interact with know us enough to be self-actualized in that way and to be competent in that way. The question then becomes, what happens to you when you step out of that bubble, i.e., Oprah Winfrey, who arguably has the biggest bubble to protect herself, yet she was able to sort of live and be this big, powerful person, financially successful, while still being discriminated against when the store person doesn't know who she is. I think that's interesting. Sorry, LB, go ahead. LB, you're muted. All right. Nature calling.
Hi, Themis. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay, so I came on a little late, but I had to there was I don't mean to derail the conversation. I understand what you're trying to say, but I just wanted to say from when you first started the conversation, especially with Dr. Collins, there's one more stereotype I believe that she missed. And I feel like after welfare queen, there is the stereotype of druggie. Um, Black women are addicted to drugs. I only say that because I worked in the hospital and I used to work in registration, and I've seen it many times where nurses dismiss Black women's pain all the time, chronic diseases, chronic illness, chronic pain disorders, and they will let those women sit for hours in pain. And I have seen Black women having to get out of their character, become the stereotype of I'm loud, ghetto in a hospital, for them to finally get medical attention, to finally get their pain medication that they're there for. I have heard nurses with my own ears saying, "Oh, yeah, she has this. She's probably here for some, pain meds. She can wait. She can wait."
Yeah.
And to see that over and over again, and to see women who are physically in pain having to fight the pain, to get loud, to argue, while sobbing, saying, I'm not a crackhead. I'm not a drug addict. I have a chronic pain disorder. Look in my files. I haven't been here every week. The last time I was here was last year. And they'll say that just to prove, like, you have to prove that you're not addicted to drugs, but they can see that they have a chronic illness. They have a chronic the pain disorder. And then I've seen it again with my own two eyes. Black nurses having to come in, swoop in for the save of the white nurse and the white doctor, saying, "Oh, what's going on, miss? Can I help you?" And you can see the relief on these women's faces when they see a Black nurse. Like, okay, yes, finally, a person who looks like me, who's not going to automatically judge me for the color of my skin.
Yeah.
And you can see the relief, and they finally sit down. They go, "Miss, I have lupus. I have this. I have that. I'm just here for this. I just want an MRI. I just want a CAT scan. Just give me something. Give me even Tylenol." Like, they'll hold Tylenol like it's precious gold. And it's like, this person is here for pain. But that was just the one thing I feel like she's missing, one other stereotype when it comes to Black women, when it comes to the medical field. And I believe after welfare queen, it is the druggie. And I believe that's from the 80s, the crack epidemic. They think all we're just here for drugs and an easy time. And that is it's not true. But to answer your question, I do believe for us to be able to fight this stereotype that we have going on with us is the fact that we have to be more active in the medical field. And I know there are a lot more Black doctors coming into the field. But I do feel when it comes to medical school, they need to update their system. They do need to update these medical journals and these medical books, because these practices are from as early as the 1500s, 1400s. And we all know gynecology was started by a white doctor practicing on Black enslaved women.
Yeah.
So when you think of that, you have to realize you can't take race out of the medical books. That's how they were written. They were written to be biased against Black people. The people who started writing these journals, they weren't including us specifically. They were just using our bodies. They're not going to use their own people. So who's closer to them? They're like, okay, well, but they're Black, so we're just going to discount all of this. More doctors that are coming into the medical field, I do believe that if they feel the bias, and even till this day, there are medical journals that literally say Black people are what is the saying, that Black
There
people
was
are,
one that said our skin was thicker and we can endure more pain.
yes, correct, and white people, and it also Native Americans, their skin is weaker, they're weak-minded, and it's a whole bunch of, but these are
Yeah, I
still being
mean,
printed every year.
for a long time, dermatologists refused to acknowledge how sensitive a lot of Black people's skin are, right? There was this notion that we did not have sensitive skin because, well, we're Black. So every kind of skincare product can work on us because, well, we're Black. And I think that I see some changes, but the fact that that within the literature, within the medical teaching, there is still bias. How do you trust science when science is so wrong as it relates to Black people? And
Correct.
the reason that is because, well, they don't care. And I'll explain that in a moment. Why I think that exists in a moment, not as a fact, but my theory.
So just to quickly be done, because I know the other ladies would like to speak. Um, for the young, for the people who are aspiring to be doctors and anything of that nature, there are two books that I feel like even in medical, I feel like in the medical school, it needs to be a part of their curriculum, because you cannot take an oath and say that you are here to serve and protect with regardless of race and creed, but at the same time the books that you're learning from are biased against Black people and people of color, period. So there's two books that I know of. One was written by actually a medical student. I don't know if he graduated yet, but I do believe he's still in medical school. His name is Malone McWende, and he actually co-authored a book titled Mind the Gap, a clinical handbook of signs and systems in Black and brown skin. And the reason why he did that is because when he went into medical school, he always kept thinking, okay, I see what this disease looks like on white skin, but where's the comparison? What does it look like on Black skin? And if
Yeah.
you hear medical stories, Black people dying unnecessarily because they couldn't find something quick enough. Oh, the
Yeah.
similarities were there, but because it's on Black skin, they were lost until the person is already deceased and they're running tests like, oh, this person had this. Um,
Which actually underscored the point where it's not, it could be racism that's animating this. And I do think fundamentally it is racism, but not in the overt way where this person is racist and this doctor is racist and he's intentionally doing this or that, right? Or she's doing this or that. Rather, I think these beliefs are actual fundamentals. Whether or not they're being taught in medical school, I think they're, this is the effect of slavery. This is the effect of Black people can work out in the sun. This is the effect of ideas around Blackness that are stereotypes and obviously racist. But the individual who is doing this doesn't necessarily have to be acting or being overtly racist. Like they may not even know. It's so embedded in their psyche, someone say. And that's what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. And in the second book, I believe it's called Dermatology. Uh, on people's skin of color, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It was written by two people, a man and a woman. I believe the woman's name was Susan Taylor and the man's name was Paul Kelly. But it's pretty much the same concept of what does certain skin diseases look like on skin of color? Because again, many of that is mistreated. Many people go on with years of pain without knowing that they have a regular disorder that could have just been solved by just basic antibiotics, basic
Yeah.
fungal cream, but because it's on Black skin, and these dermatologists, they're not being taught on Black skin. They don't know what Black skin would what the skin cancer look like they don't know. So I feel like when it comes to these kind of situations, we do have to be more thoughtful. We can't just be, it's not always marching in the streets. Like,
Yeah.
how much marching are we going to do? You
Yeah.
have to
Well,
be able to use the system to your benefit. Yeah, and I feel like if we become, or the younger generation or even current doctors right now who want to take the time out and actually write books and journals, and I know that takes a long time to get the pictures and the samples, and I know it takes a lot of time, but it will really pay off, because you will be really helping the future up and coming doctors. And like I said, if we want to have more substance, we do have to contact John Hopkins and
yeah.
discuss with talk to the president of John Hopkins, and like, listen, I have a couple of books that I feel like will help your students.
Yeah.
You cannot take an oath saying I'm going to help everyone regardless of race and creed, but in the back of their mind, they are thinking of race and creed. And when you go into, if you're working in a hospital, you don't choose your patients. You don't say, I'm gonna
Amen.
take this white one, I'm gonna take this Black one. No, it doesn't work that. Whatever person comes your way is how is your patient, and
Yeah.
their lives are physically in your hands. Um,
Themis, I
so
hope you do a show about Black men in medical system. We all have stories that will shock you. Look, I don't know if you're trolling Mistress Monica. The reality is I'm not opposed to having the men's show. The question is, will we have this level of this whatever? Not you, not whatever to you, but I doubt we would have this level of discourse. Um, Thank, who was that? I think that was nature calling.
yes.
Um, Cat.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, very good. Thanks for bringing up all those points, nature following. Um, she had brought up something about, or you had mentioned a question, Themis, about um, if you're dealing with a doctor and they don't know necessarily how to treat you, so it seems like they're being dismissive on your pain. If you're a Black person, does that mean that they're being overtly racist, or are they going off of bad manuals, or are they just operating off of being an implicit bias, which is inherent in everybody? Which is, it's not exclusive to white people, it's not exclusive to Asians or Black people. Everybody has implicit biases. Can there be confirmation bias where if you already feel this way, if you're raised in a household where people might make cross remarks about Black people, and then you open up your textbooks and they say that we have thicker skin, will that help somebody maybe lean more in to those implicit biases? Absolutely. And that's why I do definitely agree that the textbooks do need to be updated. There are a couple of I remember, just being on Facebook and seeing a couple of white female physicians speaking publicly about the outdated textbooks and how she's basically smart enough to just declare publicly, she's like, that's wrong. There's nothing scientifically factual about their skin being thicker. That really needs to be omitted from that. And she's actually trying to work on basically contacting the publishers and working, but you know how it goes with the medical. First, that, there has to be, what is it? It has to be peer reviewed. It has to, go through some sort of an abridging process in order for that information to be removed. But luckily, there are some people who are starting to, kick up some dirt and really start to gain some traction on the subject. It does generally start with doctors of color. Um, and that is why I'm glad that I believe that we have, what, 55% of medical graduates are Black women. Am I correct when I say that? I hear some sort of percentage like that. Like there are definitely a lot of new students, and so, I applaud them all and I wish them the best of luck.
Oh, the rate, we don't have an accurate rate for this year.
Mhm,
It was from 2010. There's a new one for 2018 and 2019.
mhm,
Um, but I wanted to find a video because what part of what we should be talking about here is the baseline understanding for most people in America, not just Black. The baseline is white. Like, let's be clear.
yeah,
When it comes to everything, so this lady, I don't like using people's info without just citing to them, but I don't know her name. I think it was a TikTok video. She was explaining how her daughter's friend who was white came to her house, and the daughter was looking around and she was like, why aren't there any pictures of white people? Because she was very pro black, and she asked the little girl, the white girl, do you have pictures of Black people in your home? And she thought about it for a minute and said, no, I don't. But like, everyone has pictures of white people, like, where's Jesus? um and it was like, Jesus is in here, he's just not white in our home, right? And so everyone, most people are acting from the place where the baseline is white, right? And even for Black people, you have to actively engage in making sure that your space is Black, because the base, like, when people say they want to go mainstream, what they're saying is we want to go white. That is it. That's what it means. Like, regardless of what they say, that's what they wanted, to dilute their message and go white.
mainstream is
Go white.
coded language.
Yeah, but so when I say it's not necessarily racist when doctors engage with Black women in this way, what I mean is they've never had to learn through the lens of Blackness, right? Blackness exists to them in meaningful ways, but usually in the archetypes or even stereotypes around Blackness. And so part of being a doctor, as scientific as they want to make it seem, requires an arbitrary sort of application of uh, what is right and what is wrong with someone, what are the illness. There's a level of arbitrary, like in terms of pain, for example, you have to accept as a doctor that the person telling you they're feeling pain is actually feeling the pain because you can't test it, right? And so, what are you going to rely on if not the person's direct words? You're going to rely on stereotypes, usually. You're going to rely on other things and markers, and maybe some of that markers include skin color, even if you don't know it. And so that's part of the problem. But there's also benefits to being Black. I mean, I'm not going to say this because then people are going to say, oh, you're racist. Reverse racism as if that's a thing. But instead of doing that now, I'm going to jump right into systems of dominations. And Bell Hooks is going to explain the metrics of domination, but she won't use the phrase metrics of domination. She will explain it though. And I think this is important when we talk about privilege. Because I did a video a while ago on privilege and I got a ton of heat because I said everyone has privilege, but it's the kind of privilege that matters. So let's do it.
Phrase in my work, white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, because I wanted to have some language that would actually remind us continually of the interlocking systems of domination that define our reality, and not to just have one thing be like, gender is the important issue, race is the important issue. But for me, the use of that particular jargonistic phrase was a sort of shortcut way of saying all of these things actually are functioning simultaneously at all times in our lives. And that if I really want to understand what's happening to me right now at this moment in my life as a Black female of a certain age group, I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking through the lens of race. I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking through the lens of gender. I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking at how white people see me. I mean, one of the to me, an important breakthrough I felt in my work and that of others was the call to use the term white supremacy over racism, because racism in and of itself did not really allow for a discourse of colonization and decolonization, the recognition of the internalized racism within um, people of color. And it was always, in a sense, keeping things at the level at which whiteness and white people remained at the center of the discussion. In my classroom, I might say to students, that when we use the term white supremacy, it doesn't just evoke white people, it evokes a political world that we can all frame ourselves in relationship to. And I think that I was able to do that because I grew up again in racial apartheid, where there was a color caste system. So that obviously I knew that through my own experiential reality, that it wasn't just what white people do to Black people that was wounding and damaging to our lives. I knew that when we went over to my grandmother's house, who looked white, who lived in a white neighborhood, and she called my sister Blackie because she was dark and her hair was nappy, and my sister would sit in the corner and cry or not want to go over there. I knew that there is some system here that is hurting this little girl, that is not directly the direct hit from the white person. And white supremacy was that term that allowed one to acknowledge our collusion with the forces of racism and imperialism. And so for me, those words were very much about the constant reminder, one, of institutional constructs, that we're not talking about personal constructs in the sense of how do you feel about me as a woman or how do you feel about me as a Black person, but they really seem to me to evoke a larger apparatus. And I don't know why those terms have become so mocked by people, because in fact, far from simplifying the issues, I think they actually, when you merge them together, really complicate the questions of freedom and justice globally, because it means then that we have to look at what Black people are doing to each other in Rwanda. We have to, and we can't just say racism, what have you. We have to problematize nationalism beyond race in all kinds of ways that I think there's a tremendous reluctance, particularly in the United States, to have a more complex accounting of identity.
To have a more complex accounting of identity, we are advised to use white supremacy as opposed to racism. I appreciate this. What? Bell, bell hooks, like, period. First of all, like, let's do that. And then let's get into this. I have used her argument many times on this channel. I've recited to her also, but I've used her argument particularly, and we're not sidetracking, so if you are getting mad about this, you won't get a chance to rebuttal. When we talk about the passport bros, right? I've talked about how they are lending themselves into imperialism by using the American dollar to further subjugate other groups of people. The idea of white supremacy allows us to get to the root of why things are the way they are. When we say racism, it kind of feels like we're only talking about white people and how they either enforce or whatever they do a system, rather than talking about racism. And we should, obviously, I think we should. We can talk about white supremacy, who contributes to it, who benefits from it, and who becomes subjugated in that system. Because that you are not white doesn't mean automatically you don't benefit from a system of white supremacy. By being American and having American dollars, you now benefit from that system, and you go into another system to go oppress another group of people. These people do not want equality. These people want power over other people. That is fundamentally what is happening. And so, listening to Bell Hooks so sweetly explain the system of white supremacy, we understand how other people other than white can use and weaponize that system for their own ends. They say it very overtly on YouTube, right? These people, well, one, I don't think they understand what they're doing, right? These people are not theorists, these people are not dissecting theory, but rather they're engaging in a kind of white supremacy. In the way that we think about intersectionality as it applies specifically to Black women in the system, she points out colorism, right? Colorism that is experienced by Black women. Colorism is experienced across the spectrum, right? But as it relates to Black women, it is in the dating preferences of men who overtly talk about this and demean other groups of people who are not in their preference, right? It's an exclusion in this way. It's, I like light skin, red bone, whatever, yellow bone, I don't know, some bone that's not Black. And talking about, on the other end, why they don't like dark skinned women, right? And in so doing, I think it's a part of the system to make sure that the ones you don't like know their place. Because you don't have to tell them, but you tell them to let them know their place. Add to all of this kind of oppressive system. By the way, this is lending into white supremacy. So you can be, let's be clear, based on Bell Hook's definition, you can be a white supremacist without being white. It is talking about a system of imperialism where people who are not white can collude with said system. And who gets to benefit from that collusion and at what cost? When we think about the experience of Black women as it relates to the healthcare system, part of that is a large part of that is due to white supremacy, right? In the beginning, hopefully you guys remember, I was talking about why I would shy away from just saying this doctor is racist or that doctor is racist. I repeated that multiple times for this specific reason. It is not just about the individual, though it could be, right? It could be about the individual, but it's not just about the individual. It's also about a system of imperialism, a system of white supremacy, a system that dictates certain behavior and certain people as competent or incompetent. Systematic competency is at the forefront of what Black people experience, and specifically as it relates to this chapter, what Black women experience. And I hopefully, that ties the theory together. I use bell hooks because obviously Patricia Hill Collins is absolutely intelligent, amazing, whatever. And I do, when I say whatever, I'm not being dismissive. I actually do fully engage with the work. But this video of bell hooks is one that I've replayed many times. Usually, as it relates to the passport bros and me trying to understand how, even if you want to benefit from a system that is deemed oppressive to even you, the Black passport bros, that is, when I think about how they so overtly explain using American dollars to oppress women from quote unquote impoverished community, it sickens me, but it also helps me to understand that the people who are a part of the community, I am fully acknowledging they don't have the bandwidth to understand how their actions and what they say impact how we are viewed and how we view each other. But more importantly than that, it dissuades feminist writers, it dissuades activists, it dissuades people who are thoughtful from ever trying to help. Because the truth is, a lot of these people don't actually want. I'm on a tangent and I have to, because this is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time. These people ultimately want the power to rule other people. That's it. And I don't think it's just the passport bros. I think it's about silencing women, for example, for talking about their experience with the healthcare system. The reason I needed that man to come up here just now, and I wanted him to come up, I actually was willing until towards the end. I got annoyed, and then I told him my plan. But for a moment, I thought I would go down the path with him and let him talk about Black men fully, if he could, until we got to the end, and allow and see, for example, if he was willing to really take over the space to make it about himself, which I do think he would have if I hadn't if I was able to control myself more and not laugh and just show my hand, right? It is the meaningful ways in which people will co-opt the space to make it their own. It's not about equality. It's not about wanting to be seen. It is about dominance and domination. And I wanted to see in real time if I could make an example out of that. So that was my bad for being underhanded in the way that I did that. But in a conversation about women and pregnancy and what happens to women during pregnancy, you coming up here to tell us that men go through it literally makes no sense. Um, but I think that's interesting. So white supremacy, bell hooks, ties it to imperialism and how we are collaborators, or we collude rather with it. I think that's interesting. All right, go ahead. I don't know who was off mute.
Oh, theme I could offer a rebuttal. I don't think that what you did was underhanded per se. I think you just allowed his hand to play through.
Yeah.
And you just let him show his hand. I don't think that that was underhanded. I think you, and it was basically an example in real time. I experience those often.
Yeah.
So you basically just let him just kind of like show his hand. That's all. That's not underhanded. That's just kind of not allowing the man to be the man and to step in his own pile and not play daddy and stop him. You just let him do his thing. And he
Yeah.
did,
I mean,
and he did thusly.
yeah, and to me, like, I am comfortable now. There was a point at which there was a part of me that felt like I needed to reach out and get these people in, find a way to find the men who are able to speak to issues in the community in a meaningful way. I don't have that need. If I want that, I can find that on my own individual level. It's not going to happen on YouTube. So I'm gonna continue to let them step in their mess, and they're probably not gonna come on because they've been told not to. Um, I think Tishala, sorry.
Hi, famous.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me well?
Yep,
Awesome. How are you?
doing well. This was actually, I mean, I am done kind of theorizing, and so I
Yes.
can say now this is might be my second favorite live.
Honestly, it's brilliant. I love the way you strung together Bell Hooks's theories and the Passport Bros. I thought that was very eloquent. And I could tell that you spent a lot of time thinking about it. I have as well. I love the just intersectionality is such a big piece when it comes to grappling with white supremacy and patriarchy and racism, all of it, right? And I can feel like some of the pushback that exists in the in different communities in terms of like trying to shut down that conversation, but because it is so important. And all I'd want to say to you're I think you're proposing a lot of reflective questions for these quote unquote passport bros to grapple with. And I also wonder for I would also ask them to kind of spend some time thinking about why they need to be dominating others. Like, why do you need to spend time there? What do you actually gain from it? Is it actually worth it? Because oppression essentially is just the act of dehumanizing other people. Why must you dehumanize
Yeah.
others? And
I mean, to be fair, I'm not addressing them directly. Like, I'm not saying, "Hey, stop doing this." Like, I don't care about them. Like, they'll go end up in prison or wherever they need to end up in time. But
right.
for me, what I it was I finally have the theory that I was trying to remember, right? And I am able to share that with you guys. Obviously, you guys can disagree, agree, or whatever. So for me, it was about sort of putting the ideas about imperialism and how that ties into white supremacy and what it means to collude, and how one can be a white supremacist without themselves being white. In fact, there are white people who are not white supremacists and who are actively fighting against white supremacist systems, right? Now, you're going to have to prove that on an individual basis, because I'm not about to give anyone any credit for anything outside of what I see. But I think it's quite interesting that the kind of nuance that comes into play tends to escape us as we engage in these kind of dialogues. So it's not to help them. I'm not warning them. I literally don't care about them at this point.
Right. No, I totally see that. To
Wait,
that.
1 second. This is how much I don't care. I removed the video about them that was doing well because there was some legal things in there that I didn't want them to know, because I would not want you to be good at hiding your crime. I want you to be caught. Sorry, go ahead. I won't interrupt.
Wow. That's how much you don't care. Well,
Yeah.
the shade. So yeah, I love that nuance as well regarding there are white people who don't necessarily subscribe to white supremacy. There are Black people who subscribe with their full chest to white supremacy. It exists. I think it would be amazing to have a vetting process that could really kind of sift out uh, those who are for and those who are not. And on that note, I'm going to talk. What I wanted to bring forward and add was a piece about how do you divest from that per se, and what I can offer is rehumanizing, I think. And I've gone through the medical system here in Canada, and I had a blood clot in my lungs and had to get several referrals before someone took it seriously. And it just shows to the global scale of that. And I had to go through a process of just humanizing myself and actually articulating my pain and saying ow when it actually wasn't ow, and not try to thug it out or anything like that. I think it's important that people subscribe to self-care and stand on their intersectional square. I think with a gentleman who came up and was derailing a conversation, he really kept on hearing him, but he really couldn't delineate, this is a Black woman's experience and it's different specifically from Black men's situation. He couldn't really, he kept on saying, all lives mattering it, but he really just didn't have the vocabulary to say, my experience as a Black man is distinctly different from a Black woman's experience in this specific way. He could not do that. And that's sad. And I think there needs to be more conversations about intersectionality in that way.
It is sad. But I remember the bravado with which I walked into my sociology class to see the women who had the blue hair, right? The difference between someone like him and I is he left, which I'm glad he left, so I'm not telling him to come back. But for me, I sat there in my ignorance and I recognized that, like you just said, I did not yet have the language to one, explain my own feelings. So I needed a psychology course for that, but also to engage in the kinds of conversation that the people around me were having, right? It is not a problem that you're ignorant. It is a problem that you decide to stay ignorant, right? It is a problem when you step into an environment and you feel like you are unstable a little bit. And instead of trying to figure out the new environment and stabilize yourself, you decide to fight the environment and try to make the environment conform to your belief without ever really understanding what is happening in that environment. And that's what tends to happen. People come in, they didn't hear the beginning, they didn't stay for long, but they're up on the panel or they're in the comment making comments about things that they know nothing about. And so, yeah, it is I'm not saying it's a defect, but it is a kind of maladaption. It is an unwillingness to deal with your own discomfort.
Right.
You know what, Themis? I'm going to interject real quick because first of all, I'm old and I got to go to bed. But second of all, I tell you about keeping old people up, Themis. But second of all, there was something
But
really
wait, no.
important.
Before you do, I know you're leaving, so I want to say this. Thank you so much. Your voice was invaluable. I did actually really enjoyed speaking with you. Go ahead.
You know, I love this. And I love this for you. And I really want to thank you for what you're doing here. There was something that the young man said, and I want to make sure that we catch it because it has everything to do with everything you pulled together, right? We're talking about collusion and that a white supremacist doesn't have to be white. And like you said, we may not even realize that that's what we're doing. But when I was asking the young man about what he knew about Black women's body going through pregnancy, how these stats work out for us, the real lifeness of it, he said he didn't know that. And that's kind of women's business. But it isn't if you're talking about a a community, right? You can't just put that off and say, oh, Well, that's a woman's problem. No, you're involved in that pregnancy. That
Right. They expect.
pregnancy, yeah, I'm creating a whole human for 10 lunar months. And let me tell you, it's like having the flu every day. At least it was for me. So I'm saying that we do collude in ways that we don't even realize, but we do need to point those out. And one of the things I'm finding in this whole conversation with these brilliant people up here, oh my gosh, I love y'all, um, is that we have an opportunity here because you guys are all getting ready to come to a similar conclusion, I believe. We have an opportunity here to say, um, we we cannot wait for somebody else to get us, to understand us, to those things. We're going to have to take all the education we paid so much money for and all the hard, work we have done throughout our lives, and being parents or not, or uncles or whoever, aunties, whatever. We have to take that and use that for ourselves. And what I found as I've gotten older is that white women pretty much fall away from me. Black men pretty much fall away. And it's because if you're not Black girl and Black woman centered, I'm not interested. So I say no. And I have come to understand who I am and what I want. And y'all who know me know that I really feel I really feel like one of the huge things we need to build is our self-confidence as Black women and Black girls, because we are brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
we are
I
beautiful,
mean,
we are amazing.
the
So
the
thank you
problem
guys so
is,
much.
thank you. I appreciate that. And it's gonna be, I don't, when we say build self-confidence, I am encouraged by all the women on YouTube, especially, really speaking directly to building Black women's self-esteem, because I don't know on a like a national scale. I don't know if they know how difficult a task this is. You are not just trying to tell women to be better, but you are going against a machine that is literally created to tell Black women that they are not good enough. And so I see the work and I enjoy it. I mean, obviously, I don't like the capitalistic side of it, but I said I would never speak on that ever again. So let me stop there. Thank you, Confidence with Love.
Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. I appreciate you so
Bye.
much. Thank you.
You too, dog. Bye.
I think we're gonna go with I Concerned is next.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah, I just got here, just finished with work, and one of the things I wanted to, so if I'm saying something that was already stated, please let me know. But one of the things that I think we have to name is the again the way how you want help for our problems. When we talk about Black people's problems, you want to recenter yourself because you want that help. But when it comes to problems that are mine, I'm on my own. And I think that is a unique feature of the Black female experience when we're talking about the ways that pro-Blackness is male. It's
Wait,
focused on males.
pause. The fact that you said that just frustrated, not you frustrated me, but the reality of that just frustrated me. Do you believe, drop a one in the chat if you believe that same man goes to Black male content creators' channel, or even some Black women who are talking about police brutality and talking about systemic oppression as it relates to Black men? Drop a one if you believe he went in there to say Black women also. Drop a one if you believe, drop a two if you believe he didn't do that. He just joined the conversation regarding Black men.
Yeah.
Two.
I mean, there's just no, like, I I usually wait for the survey results, but I think anybody who
Yeah,
said
I mean,
who puts one is being disingenuous. Like
I
it's
mean,
just obvious too.
it's an inference, right? Like we don't know, but I can almost guarantee. I'm willing to bet, and I'm not a betting man. I'm willing to bet that he does not go in there and tell those men to talk about women's issue. I promise you that. I promise you the women talking about black male incarceration and stuff, he does not go in there and say, hey, can you talk about women also? Can you talk about black femicide free? Can you talk about the mortality rate? Can you talk about young girls being abused? I promise you he doesn't. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't. I'm willing to bet that he doesn't.
And I'm pretty sure that when, we're talking about the black male issues and the women are doing the work, there's a malice or resentment for the fact that the black women end up taking the leadership role when it comes to even things that are pro-black, that are black men's issues. Like there's a disrespect for how much black women show up for black men when it comes to their issues, so much so that they want to ignore black women's issues but also be detractors when black women are fighting for things that are really their problem for the most part. Like the disrespect for women that might not be as attractive to them that are pro-black, or the disrespect for the women who end up becoming militant because of how difficult it is to attack these things in a meaningful way. Like, do we find that black men tend to, like women who are pro-black better than the women who are not? I don't think so. I think a lot of times they don't like the women who are militantly pro-black, and it's interesting that it benefits them the most. And that's basically what I was trying to add, is that when I think about how, you're coming to center yourself again, when this is not about you, but truly, like, you wouldn't feel comfortable doing this for anybody else's anything either. Like, you wouldn't go to a Latina woman conference. You're doing this specifically because I am black and female, and you feel entitled to my work in a way that is just so uniquely here.
Wait,
Does that make sense?
and people are like, let me just say this. There is literally no way you could not know this was about black women. Absolutely zero. The title says Black Women in America Political Economy. That's the title. Literally, that's the title.
Themis, I just have a question. Do you think that it's based off of how a lot of men are, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. Do you think it's based off of, maybe since mostly black men come to your panels, do you think it's how a lot of black men are raised, where they're just raised with this sense of entitlement, to where it's so intrinsic to their nature, they're not even aware of it when they do it? Because it happens so often here that they'll come here in the middle of the topic, they won't read the headline, they'll come up here, go backstage, wait for you to bring them up so that they could ask you, what are we talking about today?
Yeah,
And
well,
and you tell them, they completely detracted and not really care, especially if it's about a black woman's issue, because then they'll use that as a rebuttal to bring up one of their issues. It happens constantly. And I'm wondering if it's like a cultural phenomenon that you've noticed, and maybe
I
that
think
also
it's a lot of things, and I think that might be part of it. Obviously, like I agree with that. Um, there's a part of me that actually believes that deep down, black men know that a conversation about black women and black women's position necessarily implicates them. And when I say implicate, I mean in like a in like the court sort of criminal procedure
well,
sort
yeah,
of way,
the whole world
where
recognize where we are in terms of our position, where a lot of our heightened positions, we kind of had to get there on our own. So it,
yeah,
no, it doesn't shed a very good light on black men if you look at this, the state of black women in the world. It
Yeah,
doesn't
and
make our counterparts look that great. So if there were, maybe it's a hit dog hollering, I don't know.
yeah, no,
But
no, like the pro-black spaces specifically, and I'm talking about those pro-black spaces that I look into, where they are actually talking about oppression. They're very dismissive of women speaking about their issue,
mhm.
because Black women's issues currently, like, yes, competence is important. Yes, systemic oppression exists for Black women, but there is another level of oppression that exists within the Black community when we talk about abuse, homicide, and all of that kind of stuff. That implicates Black men. The article that actually came out regarding Black femicide specifically said it's difficult to talk about Black femicide because it implicates Black men.
Right. Hence the reason that commenter that said that the safest place for a Black woman is in the home.
Oh, I was waiting for that to come.
Oh yeah, me too.
That one I wanted to come up. Yeah.
Here's my thing on that. Like, how do you? The thing is that we've
Nope.
talked about.
Nope. Let's not engage with it. Mm-mm.
Okay,
I
well,
don't. Mm-mm.
I'll move past that, but it's kind of to the point earlier. Like when we think about like the the realities of being Black and female at work, right? You've mentioned how often Black women have supported you on your journey to where you're going. And it's so common that many people assume that Black women are going to do that for everyone and not expect reciprocity. So we think about how then damaging it is for the women who are anti-Black woman to represent us. And that's, I think, a layer that really hurts, because the women who don't like, the Black women who don't like Black women, who alienate Black women, who, continue on in their ways. A lot of times it's for men's attention, but it's such a layered betrayal in this unique use case, because it's we need you experience this as well. And so that's why I find it so horrible when there's a Black woman grifter that in a different way that I feel like deserves a completely different level of judgment and accountability. It's when you're a Black female grifter that's making channels disrespecting Black women, when you're a Black female creator alienating, acting like Black femicide doesn't exist. There's just like a special temperature in hell for you, in my opinion.
Well, that's your opinion, not mine. But I do think that um, I think that is right along with what is expected in the Black community. So I am not, maybe I should be, I don't know. You are, but I am not as judgmental. Like even Chantel, like I don't watch, I just decide not to watch, not to engage. I don't think the level of intellectual rigor is high. So for me, I just like, okay, no. But I don't expect actually seeing people like Chrisley, Paris, Yanni, Cynthia G, Pink Pill, those people feel like outlier to me, right? The rest feel like they're doing what is expected. And I don't want to go into that anymore, but I probably need to do some thinking on that and come back with a video. But they probably don't want me to say they're strong, but it's the kind of strength required to go against the culture, because you are definitely going when authors of the Black femicide article are saying it's difficult to talk about this because it implicates. Yeah, we're in a culture that doesn't allow for that. So yeah.
Yes. That does go along with tonight's topic. When a Black woman chooses to identify herself as a woman first and Black second, it is often met with strong opposition, not only from Black men or from the community, but also other Black women. Call it a generational thing, call it a familial thing or a cultural thing, but many Black women have learned the art of moving in silence, because that when they do try to vocalize how they are trying to self actualize. And what that really means is getting down to the core. The only reason why we recognize ourselves as being Black women is because of the identity that's been conscripted to us. But at a natural level, we are women. Um, and
Yeah,
so,
wait. Themis and pretty much all the black women, black men on the panel in the chat are okay with allowing black men to get away with disrupting the discussion. Just saying. Um, so I am not okay with it. I've kicked off a lot of people before now. I usually say I don't kick off people, but I had to, so no, I don't. I no longer say that. The issue is very simple. If I don't let these men talk, I am a dictator essentially, which now I'm fine with, because if I let them talk, there is not much coming, and in fact, other content creator can literally clip it and say, "See, this is what black men think," right? And so there is no win. There's literally no win for letting these random men come up here and talk. Um, Letting random women come up here and talk usually lead me into a thought process that I've never thought about. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is new. This is a new idea. This is interesting, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not saying there's some women who don't come up here and say complete nonsense, because that has happened. But as a general matter, there's a handful of men who come on, impossible being one of them, but there's a handful of men who come on and I'm like, this is actually quite thoughtful. Then there's the women. What did what's his name? He ran against Obama. He said a binder full of women. Ah, who is that? Well, the joke is escaping me now. Anyway, there's a lot more women who come up and engage in that way. Mitt Romney, but it's too late. The joke is gone. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like I want them to derail. I'm waiting for the day that a young man come up here and maybe drags me, but do it intellectually in a way where I'm like, oh, I am wrong. I didn't know I was wrong, but when that happens, you guys will be the first to know because I'll admit it live on air. I think the next person is wait, 1MZD. Go ahead.
Hi, Themis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you for letting me come on. I discovered you when I was searching YouTube one day looking for something to listen to, and you were talking about Paula Patton's chicken, and I've been hooked ever since.
Oh my God! Wait.
I twerk in your chat as Lois Ray.
How long have you been on? Did you wait? Maybe you found that later. But that is like a real. That's one of my oldest videos.
Well, I found it maybe like a few months ago. And I've been hooked ever since. And I'm so glad I found your channel. You know, I love the intelligent conversations that you have. And I'm also a follower of Cynthia G. I've been following her since she was in her car on lunch break talking about since 2016, I think that was. I wanted to come on here and you mentioned something. I had wrote this down. I don't want to mess it up about white supremacy in the medical field not being limited to white people. And I wanted to tell you the story about my mother. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2001 or 2002. And she went on to get chemo and radiation. And chemo and radiation has a tendency to cause clotting, right? And she had been a nurse since before I was born, so all of my life, and I'm in my 50s now. She, you know, when she felt able to work. She wanted to continue working, so she was doing private duty nursing. She was coming home one day and she felt a shortness of breath. She believed that she was having a heart attack, and she turned around and drove herself to the hospital. She got to the hospital and she was telling them, she went to the hospital that she worked at. She worked at Detroit Medical Center in Detroit. Um, they brought her in and rushed her in immediately and put a catheter in her and did something called an angiojet, where they break up the clots. And they broke up 60% of the clot that she was having. But they discovered that she had had 3 small heart attacks that day. So I didn't find all of this out until I was at work while all this was going on, and I went to visit her after I got off work. When I got to the hospital, there was a doctor there, a Black doctor, who had already signed my mother up for open heart surgery the next morning. He did not call her primary care doctor. He did not call anybody in the family. My mother was in intensive care and she was talking out of her head. She almost didn't even recognize me. And he told me, they were prepping her for surgery. I'm like, wait a minute, she's not having surgery. What are you talking about? And he said, yeah, she signed to have open heart surgery. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. She's not having open heart surgery. Now, I work in legal. I've been working in legal almost 30 years as a legal assistant, and I did medical malpractice for like 10 years. And I know the negligence that goes on with that. And that doctor stood in the intensive care. They actually had to put me out because I got loud and I got on the phone and called a primary care doctor. He didn't even know what they were planning on doing. And he insisted that she needed open heart surgery. Now, I've done research on open heart surgery, and it is it's more difficult on a woman than it is on a man. There was a
I
good
don't well, I don't know about open heart surgery, but before you continue, the fact that this is so commonplace is really annoying me. Let me find this again. The fact that like Serena Williams essentially had to become her own doctor,
yeah.
right? Like the fact that I shouldn't have to know any of this. Continue. Sorry.
Okay. So my sister came to the hospital. They were all in the waiting room. I went to the waiting room to ask, if they knew what was going on. And there was a white doctor in the hospital who came in that waiting room and he said, look, I don't think your mother needs open heart surgery. The catheterization did a great job of breaking up the clots, but I only have privileges at this hospital. I'm not on staff, and you didn't hear this from me. And if you tell somebody I told you, I would deny it. This was a white doctor. So the Black doctor, I went back to him. I was like, can you show me what makes you think she needs to have open heart surgery? That's so dire that she needs to have it. He took me to his office and he showed me the computer of the fluid that they injected into her body. And it went through, and I told him, I was like, well, if the fluid is going through, how come you can't put her on blood thinners? Why do you feel like you need to do open heart surgery?
Not you diagnosing now.
Yeah. And then I called her primary. Like I said, I called her primary. He didn't know. And I just told the doctor, I'm like, look, my mother was like out of it. I was like, and I was so upset that I was like, Ma, how you going to sit up here and let these people doctor on you? And you sick, you too sick. And she was like, well, would you be my advocate? She was out of her head. She wasn't even in a proper position to be making those kind of decisions. And she did not have surgery that day. My
Yeah,
mother lived 5 years with pancreatic cancer. That was in 2002 or 2003. She passed in 2007. Um, and there was another doctor there who also talks her into a surgery called the Whipple surgery, right? It's a very, very risky and a very, very dangerous surgery that they do to try to remove clots. This doctor had my mom thinking that he was going to take care of her. Another Black doctor, and they were both in their 30s. He opened my mother up and then closed her up and said, well, the surgery is just too difficult. We can't do it. My mother worked at that hospital. She had great insurance. And I think that they were just using her uh, for a payday. So the doctor never did the Whipple surgery. But like I said, she went on to live 5 years with that, and she passed in 2007. And you know, the abuse that goes on in these hospitals, it is very important to have an advocate for you. You know, tell people what's going on with you and have somebody there that can speak for you, because these doctors will sign you up for surgery and your family won't even know until the next morning. You know, you won't even get any calls or anything like that, you know. And like I said, I work in medical malpractice, and I worked on the insurance side. We were for the defense. We had to defend these doctors, and I've seen doctors sued, the same doctors sued 7, 8, 9, 10 times, you know. So I think the hospitals, and I understand that, you know, sometimes we have to go there and get help, but there's not a place that I would want to be. And you people are very, very, you know, they're trusting, and you have to have an advocate to speak for
I
you
mean,
and check
to
on
be
you.
fair though, who else who can you trust if not the doctor and the priest? Well, I would never trust the priest, but the doctor at least.
Well, I would say get second opinions. If a doctor
Yeah, no, no,
tells
no.
you,
No,
mhm,
I agree with you, and I don't think you should. But just as a general matter, as a society, we tend to trust the doctors.
yeah, yeah, and I'm telling you, you couldn't pay me to, you know, I would never feel comfortable being up in a hospital.
Yeah.
My mother, while she was in her later stages, she was wearing a fentanyl patch on her chest. It was just covered up, right? And she started exhibiting signs of dementia, like she was just talking out of her head, right? And I just thought that was a symptom of the, you know, the cancer it has spread in her body. Come to find out, she had a blood infection. I had another cousin who's a nurse who went up in there and looked at it. She said, "You know, this thing is infected." And she had them call the head nurse. They had a whole lot of temps in there, and they never checked the patch to discover that my mother had this blood infection. When they finally discovered it and started giving her the antibiotics, do you know she came out of that state of dementia?
Mm.
She didn't know who she was. You know, and I, like I said, I thought it was part of the disease. She came out of that and she was in her right mind, and I couldn't believe it, you know. And I don't, I mean, I guess things happen for a reason, but I'm just glad that she was able to come out of it, because I was able to talk to her before she passed and she was in her right mind. But you know, we are guinea pigs in these hospitals
Yeah.
for black doctors who want to be successful, who
Well,
want to
I wouldn't put the onus on black
want,
doctors.
I'm
I would
not
just
saying
say,
just black, but both white and
yeah.
black, but we have
And that's
to.
why this is why
Mhm,
I think the theory when it comes to bell hooks is so important, because I think so often because we see someone who has our skin color, there is also an added willingness to trust.
yes.
And I think for some people they see someone who is white and they're more likely to trust that. But the reality is the system doesn't discriminate in terms of who can feed into it.
Yeah, yeah. But
So I mean
that's all I
I'm
wanted. Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, to just bring that to your attention and your listeners. You know, we have to be questioning both, you know, more so white doctors, because when I was in labor with my daughter, you know, my doctor, he was a gynecologist and he was at his office delivering kids. So I'm in the hospital in labor, and they would not give me anything for pain. I literally laid up in the hospital screaming and hollering. And when my doctor finally showed up, after I had been in labor for about 5 hours, my doctor is a Black African doctor. The people who were taking care of me while I was in the hospital until he came over there, they were all white. And they were just looking at me like I was crazy. They didn't give me anything for pain, nothing. And I was screaming and screaming. My doctor finally came and then told them, give me Oxycontin, give me whatever I needed. And then I got the care. But it was around 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening when he finally got there. They, like I said, they were just looking at me like I was crazy. And they were all white.
Yeah.
Nurses, doctors checking on me. They didn't give me a cold a rag or anything to wipe the sweat off my hair. They gave me nothing at
Yeah.
all,
I mean,
nothing at all.
yeah, that I mean, I'm sorry to hear about your mom, for example, and I'm glad she actually survived that ordeal for as long as she did.
Thank
Um,
you.
and the fact that that's not uncommon is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
Um,
thank
but
you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, by the way, for sharing your story. But if you ever feel the need to, you can like write up an article. I'm just now starting this, and send it to me. I'll have someone edit it if you need, and I can publish your story on the website.
Okay, sure, I will do that. I
Thank
will do
you.
that. Thank you so much, Themis, for having me. I appreciate it, and I will continue listening.
All right, thank you.
Alrighty, have a good one.
Olivia, everyone else will have 1 minute. Olivia, I don't know, is it Olivia, me, not me, then LB? The panel is closed, by the way. Let me add the last. There's one more person. All right, the panel is closed. Olivia, go ahead. You have a minute.
Miss. Oh, okay.
Yeah, let me go in the after show. Let's do this in the
Okay.
after show. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Themis. Hi,
Hey.
everyone. I love this. This is like the best live. I can't wait to watch this back. Um,
Mhm.
but I think, unfortunately, and why I like restrained myself from coming on earlier, because I didn't want to make this about black men. But of course, a black man felt the need to come up here and derail, like always. This always happens. Um, Unfortunately, they play a part in the perception of us. We unfortunately are linked together. And we as Black women, we're going to have to really divest when it comes to ourselves in like healthcare, when it comes to business, when it comes to everything about us. We are going to have to take matters into our own hands, because Black men show time and time again that they don't care about our issues. Anytime we talk about our issues, they have to make it about them. um I think that our like the perception of us, and like I guess what we were talking about, I guess like the depiction of Black women, it's always been, the mammy, you know, Captain Save a Black Man. It's always all these things, which also play a part in, I think, even the support of like the Woman King, which just came out. And there's all these headlines, oh, surprise, it's number one in box office and blah blah blah. But like those things, like that story is important, and we have to support things like that, because when we see Black men depict us in Hollywood or in pictures, you see Tyler Perry, you've seen Martin Lawrence, you've seen Jamie Foxx. How we get depicted is not the way that we depict ourselves. It's totally different. And so it just goes to show we have to take these things into our own hands, because if we do not, we will continue to get this treatment, even when it comes to, like we were talking about, maternal um, mortality rates in Black women. The men don't care. You ask this man, does he know about it? They don't care. But they're helping to make these babies, but they don't care. Of course they don't know, because they don't stick around to take care of these children. They don't stick around to take care of the women.
Sorry, I
So like,
forgot there was a minute.
sorry. So like, yeah, I'm sorry. I know I'm going all over the place. I had a million and one ideas in my head when I was thinking about all this.
Oh,
But
no worries. We can
yeah,
come
we
back
just
on Friday and have
okay.
it.
But yeah, we just have to take matters into our own hands. We do have to divest, and it doesn't mean that you don't ever have to be like, you can't be with a Black man, but it means just divest from making them the center and focal point of your life and your happiness, because they do not have you as the focal point.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to attempt to hold a strict 1 minute rule because I said I was going to do 2 minutes. Now it's 2 hours. Now it's 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's me, not me, then LB. Yes.
Hey, Demas, how's it going? I
I'm
love
good. How are
this.
you?
Love this stream. A lot of things to say. Unfortunately, Prince Petty already said like my first talking point in the comments about how men, kind of like the gentleman who came up, is the same type of person that will devalue education in women. And then there is this desperate need for doctors. And then who's going to be doing it? You know, it's not the men running out there to get their PhDs and their MDs. So that is what it is. The other thing that was pretty interesting that came up is that, you know, with the infant mortality and also maternal mortality rates, is that they were saying as a solution to hire more Black doctors. And while I do believe that this is absolutely critical, but it's interesting that there was never any focus on actually solving what's happening with the white doctors and the doctors of other nationalities, as to why they cannot provide the same level of care for all their patients. That seems to never be addressed. It always goes to, well, if only Black people can take care of Black people, then let's just bring more of them in and then they can do it. It's not being addressed as why they cannot offer a standard of care, which I think is really important, because it kind of puts the onus on sort of the victims, you know, which are the Black people that are being underserved, kind of like with domestic violence. You know, now they're the ones that are sort of in charge, and we're the ones that are in charge of solving this problem, which I just don't think should be, you know, and that was just kind of it. I think that's 1 minute.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You hinted at something that we were talking about, but I will wait to get into that on Friday. Well, not hinted. You specifically talk about a theory. Thank you, and me, not me. I don't like rushing you and LB at all, so I am so sorry.
No, it's fine. I come in at the last minute, so I know what to expect. Thanks.
LB.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so I actually wrote an article on this when I was in grad school, more centered around the law.
But you said you sent it to me. Did you send it now or you sent it a while ago? Because if you sent it a while ago, I haven't read it yet.
No, I sent it today.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I sent it today. It unfortunately I spilled wine on my computer and my school deleted our Google Drives, so I don't have the original copy. I have a copy with editor's notes. But in my research, one of the things that I came across is that you can directly tie race to outcomes in medical mortality. And you can narrow it down and rule out other things. So one of the things that I ruled out in my article was the idea that it's not based off of race, it's based off of wealth. Because Asian households were the top earning, Asian women were the healthiest, and despite being the oldest, they had maternal mortality rates that were within range with white and Hispanic women. However, when you get to Native American and Black women, there's a ridiculous gap. So white, Asian, and Hispanic women are within a 2.2 range of each other in terms of maternal mortality rate. However, there's a 27.9 point gap, or 27.9 gap from their range to the range of Black women dying. And then aside from that, I wanted to know if maybe in the future I could read like part of the intro, because to me, honestly, that was my favorite part of the paper, and it was about like different women's experiences with maternal health care and how I came to the realization in reading this paper that I'm literally afraid of having a baby in this country.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will go through the paper, and if I get the approval, I can publish that too. So there are 2 articles now that I can possibly publish on the website. And yes, you can read the intro. Hello?
Wait. Yeah.
Yeah, where we can read the intro for one of the openings.
Oh, okay, okay. I was like, wait, right now.
No, 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 yeah. I'm trying
I
to
was like,
I'm trying
huh?
to stick to my schedule.
Okay.
I have mango juice to go drink.
Oh gosh, not off the lips of the mans.
No, 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 no. No. I am the king. um and was it Nali or Nail? I feel terrible now because I've seen you around. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Can you let the next person go before me? Can I go? I'm trying to
What?
make it home.
Sapphire, go ahead.
Hi, I love your show. I just wanted to say that. But every time I come on, I'm usually have really high anxiety. um, but one of the things that I wanted to point, for me, I suffer from like a lot of chronic illnesses, and I just wanted to tell a lot of people that do go to the hospital a lot to take advocates with you at all times. Like, um, there are a lot of, I mean, I guess I find a lot of like people that like are very close to me or people that also have chronic illnesses. Like we accompany each other. A lot of my friends like that I made once I find out they have an issue, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go with you to the hospital when you're feeling this way because I don't want people to treat them in a terrible way because I've been treated very terribly. It's very terribly. Like I had an ovarian cyst that wasn't taken out for 6 years that immobilized me, and I wasn't able to continue my education at all
Hmm. Oh my
because
God, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm finally going back, but it took basically 3 years out of my life. um, and I ended up like suffering a stroke because of my bleeding issues because they wouldn't give me the right type of medications or they would completely take me off of my medications. But a lot of that was overturned mostly because my mom fought a lot. And at the time, I was like in such a deep depression because of my illness that I didn't care whether I lived or died. So I chose to like, I got to the point where I was so tired of talking that I just chose not to speak. And I don't want that for other Black women. So I really urge you to like make connection with people around you, for people who actually care about you, to like bring them with you to the hospitals who will speak for you, people who you know won't shy down when you're having issues, people who you can tell your pain to and they'll speak for you. And like sometimes like when people don't listen to me directly when I'm speaking, when another person in the room speaks, they listen. Um and it's crazy to say, but I take my white friends because they listen to white people more than me, or my friends or my friends of color. So I usually take, if we have a white person, it'd be like, okay, white person, we have to take you, and they understand, because they also suffer from chronic illnesses and they're there to help. But I would say create a community around yourself that will be supportive for you.
I completely agree. I am so sorry. Are you okay? How are you now?
I'm a lot better. I changed my degree, like but and I'm hoping to get my um my PhD in psychology and a master's in sociology. Or I'm kind of I'm kind of in a fight between sociology and social work to help
Mm.
people like in my position.
I think we should do a workshop on figuring out where and how to go through the process of deciding your major, what you're going to study, and what you're going to do. But I try not to advise on that generally, as I'm someone who thinks practicality is the most important thing, and that's not always true.
I
So,
think that I'm sorry for interrupting.
oh, you're fine, you're fine.
I think that it would be something that I would really love if you decided to do it. Because um I like I don't want to make it all about myself, but I do need a lot of guidance, and sometimes that like I know I want to help people, but I don't know which way to like go per se. And I don't have a lot of people in my family that have gone to college, that have gone through that experience. And I think that that's very important for people um, that are the first people in their family to actually do this, so that they have people that they can speak to and people that have gone through the process to make it so that they can have a foot in the door.
Yeah. For you, just for you, remind me, email me actually, and let me know. Make the heading something like the subject line, um, updates. Include the word update in all capital letters in the subject line of the email, and then email me so that I know to include you in the workshop, because I was going to do a workshop with Vanessa about navigating the corporate world, but instead, I'm going to do that sometime this year, regarding school and university and that sort of stuff. Because I was putting that off, but instead, I'm going to do that one. I don't know when yet, but probably in December. Um, so yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, thank you so
I'm proud
much.
that you're overcoming this, and like you're fighting for what you want, and you're still in school, and you're like you're living, you're attempting to like grab hold of life and help people. But please make sure you help yourself first. Let
Yeah,
the let the run over from your cup be that which helps others, and don't tilt your cup to pour into someone else.
I
Not right
think
now.
I think that's something I'm learning very slowly. It's because I push myself so hard for my community. Um, that like in the beginning when I was getting sick, I didn't pay attention to the fact that my body was giving up. And then it took me until I was in that state to realize that, oh my God, I'd never even had a day where I went and got my hair done, you know?
Yeah.
So now I'm like, I it's weird. I give myself hours that I work, and then I'm like, okay, you've worked this many hours, that means you have to do this many hours of self-care.
Yeah. Just make sure your self-care for you specifically. Make sure your self-care, the hours are more than how much you work for now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Have a good one. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you. Have a great
have a good
day.
night.
Thank you so
That was
much.
so nice. Thank you. I appreciate you being so vulnerable. So I really appreciate that. Lily, welcome to the membership. It's awkward doing this after that story, but I have to. Thank you so much, Lily, and welcome to the Thoth level. Um, all right, are you ready now?
I am. I'm so sorry about that, Themis. I
No,
was
no,
like,
you're
I'm
fine. How do
almost
I pronounce
home.
your name?
I'm almost home. So I would just want to speak about the healthcare situation. Um, I'll just say that I work for the healthcare system. So some of the things that I've actually seen with working with some of the doctors is like for Black women, it's unreal. Like I would say example, let's just say patient A is white, patient B is Black. Patient A, patient B both have like the same history. Let's just say, when the patient came in, they found drugs or something in their system. And when it comes to pain, uh, let's say both of them, like I said, have the same setup. You would, text the doctor, you'll try to get in touch with the doctor and say, okay, this patient's in pain. Patient A, patient B, both are in pain. 10 out of 10 pain. And believe it or not, like when they say and they um, statistically say that they think that Black women can take more pain. They think that like we're just like drug seekers. That is true. Like that is absolutely true. I've seen patient A and patient B have the same setup and they won't give patient A, which is black, pain medication because she came in and she had drugs in her system, which is the same thing that patient B has, which is white. And this is me seeing it from a perspective of actually working as a healthcare worker. So I think a young lady said something about advocating for yourself. Yes, you can try to advocate for yourself. I've been on the opposite end as well, meaning like being a patient. And even when advocating for yourself, they don't listen to you. Like, this is coming from a person that actually works in the medical field, knows the medical field, and you will even let them know, like, hey, like, I know the protocol, I know what's supposed to be done. Believe it or not, these doctors, they don't care. They will let you suffer in pain. They won't listen to you. They will send you home when they're not supposed to send you home. This is coming from a person that was actually sent home and within less than 24 hours was readmitted into the hospital for the same thing. After telling the doctor, I don't think that this is the best idea to send me home.
Yeah.
So black women, yes, you do need to advocate for yourself. And I would also state that even I think one lady said that her mother was like out of her mind. Legally, they're not even supposed to do that. Like
Yeah.
if someone is not like
You
competent
can,
enough
you
to,
cannot consent in that.
right, you
Yeah.
cannot consent. And then when she said, "Oh, you don't," I literally invisible pearls were clutched. I was just like, "What? Like you're
Yeah.
not supposed to do that. Literally, you're not supposed to do that." That's the first thing that they ask a nurse. Hey, is the patient with it? Like, do you think they can give consent? No. There's neural questions that you are even supposed to ask a patient. If they don't know where they are, if they don't know their name, that patient cannot give consent. They
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
So for someone to say that they were going to do hope and heart surgery on a patient that wasn't even like neurologically there, that's scary. But I've seen it.
I
I've
mean,
seen it.
I think there are some exceptions regarding emergency. I'm not into malpractice law, but yeah, as a general matter, particularly when they don't need it or shouldn't be doing it, the fact that you wanted to do that is very much odd to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you all think about having black as advocates? Is that possible?
To have what? Say that again.
I don't understand.
Oh, I know what she's talking about. A doula. A doula is a doula is like a person that helps with childbirth, like from home. So I mean, yeah, they can be
Oh, you're
advocates.
talking about specifically in for childbirth?
Yeah, doulas are for childbirth. Normally, they're for childbirth.
Um, I mean, I'm here for a birthing doula. Gotcha. That makes sense. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I am gonna be on the side of having as many avenues for advocacy as you can, but I find like we can plan, right, but the reality is about illness and going to the hospital generally that's not generally, there are times when it happens where it just happens, right? So
Right.
you can have all these kinds of structures around you just in case you need to go, know who to call, when to call them, and all of that. But in an emergency, a lot of the time all of that goes away. And so the question becomes, how do we fix the system or create our own? Um, but yeah, I think I mean, always, I think try to be as prepared as you can and getting as many advocates as you can is important.
Correct. And I think it was me, not me, that said something along the lines of like,
Thank you, Imara. Go ahead.
um, like the fact that the white doctors or whatever, doctors in general, because it's not just white doctors that do this. Doctors in general, why is it not addressed the simple fact of them not getting to the core issue of why you're not treating everyone fairly? Because they're not. I mean, it's 2022 and they're not. I can tell you that from working in the hospital. They're not. That's the issue. Okay, why do you feel that this person should suffer and this patient shouldn't? Why do you feel that this life is more valuable and this life is not? That's the issue. That's what we need to get down to. Because they take an oath to treat everybody the same. We all do. When you're a nurse, you take an oath. When you're a doctor, you take an oath. When you're a surgeon, you take an oath. And that oath is to treat everyone with the same type of respect, the same type of medical care. Everybody takes an oath. So why are you not honoring that oath? That's the issue.
Yeah.
But that's all I have to say. I think that that's just the core issue. We need to get down to, and of course we know that racism plays a part in that. We know that, but in healthcare, I mean, you can't just take care of all the white people if you're white when you're a
Yeah.
racist. So why take the oath if you're really not going to honor it? That's the real question. If you're going to be a racist, why be a doctor?
Well, I
Why?
mean, that's the thing. That's why I wanted to stay clear of racism, because not clear, but I think white supremacists has a better sort of way of approaching it, because it's more insidious than one person being racist, because obviously black doctors also engage in the behavior too.
Right.
So it's about the teaching, it's about the hospitals and the rules and regulation that are in place. So I think saying racism reduces it, though I wouldn't say it's incorrect. It just dismisses other things. But yeah, um, I want to thank you all for coming on. The panel is closed. I know the back chat is full. Thank you guys so much. This is now in my top 2 live, and there's some reasons for that. I like when things go smoothly, and things went smoothly. And so I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate you guys for coming. I know this was theory heavy. Um, I don't know. I apologize for this because this is my favorite thing to do. But I do appreciate that you guys stayed with it and were engaged. So thank you guys so much. Before we end, a subscriber's daughter made a picture. What is this? And what's that? Toka Life? I don't know what that is, but she made something, and she told her mom that she had a surprise for her mom. And it was a picture of me, apparently. And so her mom just sent it to me, and I think it is the cutest thing ever. I wish I could like print this and frame this. This is so precious. This might be the most precious thing I've ever received. I mean, it's not mine, obviously, but I wish I can print and frame this. Because period, this look exactly like me. I feel like this is how I look. So period. This is what I was going for. Um, Thank you so much. I'm not gonna say who it's from, but oh, not the little daughter. I'm whatever. I'm so appreciative. I don't get things like this. Also, for those who ask, the website is steamisynthos.com, and you can go on there. I have blogs and all kinds of things there. And there are a bunch of pop-ups. But let's get back to this. This is how I want to end the live. This right here is how I want to end the live. Thank you. Well, I almost said the name. Have a wonderful night. This just made my night, so thank you. And also, you guys made my night. Now, I do realize there are a ton of people upset in the chat regarding the fact that the professional development workshop is closed. I would open it if I could. And this is why it's good to have other people and other systems that prevent me from doing things, because I would open it again. Zoom, or the Zoom that I have, can only host 100 people. And so I can't, there's nothing it's out of my, it's above me now. But know that I'm very, like, my heart is filled with joy that you guys rushed to it and you guys are actually caring about the things that I care about and the things that I want to do and how I'm planning to build and all of that. So it's like, I don't know, like, if I was a crier, I would probably be crying right now. This picture and the workshop and like you guys sticking around, it's pretty awesome. So thank you guys so much. We sold out. Have a good night, guys. Have a wonderful night. Bye.